Then we get this.
I didn't get the email yet, Andy.
There. Computer, audio, video settings, live cam. Okay. That one is working.
Yeah,
Can you send this one?
Can you send it to me again, Andrew? I don't seem to have got it.
I sent it last night. You
Yeah.
haven't got an email from last night?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I think I'm still stuck on the
Yes.
old email account. Oh, you probably don't need it on your laptop. I'll send it to you. What's your email address?
Dan@hotmail.com. I've updated the Keynoters website.
Okay. I think I'm using the wrong address.
No worries. If you could update it, that'd be good.
Okay, here's the number. Just put the number in because my email's not working. So get onto Zoom and just type what the meeting number is.
Yep.
8019 393
Yep.
615.
Yep, I mean, yes, AirPods are. Cool, yay!
This is on Zoom, isn't it?
Not yet, but it soon will be.
That one's on Zoom. Okay, I'll put this over there.
See, the thing that we need to work out is the spacing of the various devices.
Oh, that's the camera.
What's this one between the white and you? Is
Yeah,
that
that
the
one.
right shaped hole?
Yeah, that's it. Good stuff.
I have my uses sometimes.
Awesome.
When you guys are clear, I'll just take some photos so we can see what we've done. You can do that this afternoon. I'll put it, make it as a PDF.
Actually,
Or after the
this.
We'll need to turn the sound off the camera, probably.
Or is it the projector that the sound is coming from?
How do I turn the sound off on the camera?
Go into the main zip. Okay. Where's the setup? Right. Go to that arrow. Audio settings. and then make sure that it's set to that, whatever that's called, not the live cam.
Actually, no, we can't do that. We've got to do it here. Because when you're standing up here, you need the microphone close.
Right.
So we need, and then the speaker's close, and this machine on its own sitting there will be fine.
Okay.
I'm actually getting pretty reasonable at doing this at work, because I do this all the time now. But with the one laptop, onto Zoom. It's 9:10. I feel a little bit of time, but I'm pressured.
Well, we were in and, well, I was late, but I was here by about 1:45.
I'm standing here in the spot. So you can see and hear me. Yeah.
Good. That looks like it's working. That is working. And there's no echo. There is a little bit. There's a little bit.
But
Can I just make a semantic change for that? Can the bigger part be the speaker view and the audience be the
I don't know how to do it. I'd like that too. Hang on, sure. Thing. You did this right yesterday. Oh, I've got to just make sure the mic's off on all of these, which is what you were saying.
so maybe that uses no mic at all.
This one should have no mic. Okay, now.
Oh, it's, sorry. Swipe from the left on here. So you can change your view.
There's one more mic.
somehow across that.
Talk to me.
Yeah, I think it's probably. Is there?
How are we going? Talk to me.
Because that's that turned off.
Talk to me. What's happening now? Well, this. How's that sound? If I turn this one, if I now start talking to this, can we hear you? Hello? Oh, no, it won't. Can you talk from another way?
What? I'll talk from here.
Yeah, just talk from there for a sec to see what it
Hello?
Exactly.
Okay. So now turn the mic off. Okay. Now turn your speaker up, because this is not letting it go through that speaker when I'm talking to the phone. Can you hear me over there?
I can hear you acoustically, but I'm not hearing you through any device.
And that's what we want.
Yeah?
So that's coming out of their speakers. It shouldn't come out of ours. When we're talking in here, it should not come out of that.
But will it get picked up so anybody online will hear us through Zoom?
They'll hear us through that. Don, you say something over. Oh.
Yeah, I think.
But the problem is it's picking me up here. So that sound's coming into here and it's making sure it doesn't go back to the phone, to the speaker. I think it's going to work. If you took that laptop into the kitchen and just took off and just like unplug it.
Okay, I am now going to put this into Zoom. I put myself into the meeting. Acoustically not through a device.
Turn your mic on and up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So we found the problem?
I think it's solved. If you went to another room and shut the door, just set it down.
Yeah. Or in here, there's a hole in here.
You hear it on your laptop.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you guys.
Okay, this is it. We just leave it there.
So what's the key? What have we done that's right? Can we make some?
This is the mic, and this is the speaker, and it's going through here as a speaker.
And everything else is muted.
I don't know how that worked, but it worked. See, what I do at work, I mute this and let this be this mic. But I might. But I don't want to touch anything now.
No.
Now we need to document this.
Maybe. I ran a session yesterday at work. I was running once every couple of weeks, and this setup in a room bigger than this, and it worked. All right. Okay, we're ready. Half an hour ready. Unbelievable. There's still a mic coming through.
Well, I am going to get the video camera running.
Next.
Right.
Why did that change today?
Okay, that needs to stay on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm now. Oh, there he is.
Well,
So I think for the next few minutes,
yeah.
I'll do the camera. We don't need any of my other microphones.
And you're using a camera for what? We've got a camera on the phone.
Just video the whole thing.
Oh, okay, video. I think. We're not going to connect to Zoom.
No, it's just going to be recording what.
Okay.
No.
A camera for a camera sake.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Okay, so this can go away. We don't know what that problem was. It's probably that the camera was turned off. So yes, let's tidy away everything that we're not using. And I think we are there. Well done, team.
Yeah, I just need to document everything after we've done the meeting.
Well, I think the key is everything is, we use this for sound and everything else is music. So the video camera won't have any sound. Well, it will be recording, but it won't be generating.
You okay with that, Dave?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Now, what's that? Now, do we have anything for morning tea? Do we care? Okay, that'll do. Yep, that's why I sent you the message, Andrew. I will do MC and or table topics.
Okay, you can do table topics.
I'll use the story cards.
Okay.
It's a bit of a cheat, but.
Yeah. You ready with your speech, David?
Yes.
This one of us is.
Yeah. You know, I like yesterday when you were talking, I compared all these slides.
I've done all of them. It's going to be it.
Do you know what I did all the slides? No, I've decided to just not use any of them. I'm just going to.
Oh.
Yeah, because I found them really hard to I find that when I shared it with Anna, I said, this is what I'm going to do. I went through with Anna and then I went through with my daughter Sally without the slides, and I thought, okay, I'm going to ditch the slides. It's too hard.
It's actually better without slides.
Okay, no, it's not. If you want people to learn, the key is to look at what the why is. If it's entertaining, maybe.
Yeah.
Because with an entertaining presentation, you're not too worried, as long as people leave with a good feeling. But if your aim is learning, you've got to have visuals.
Yeah,
and that is something where Toastmasters is very, very weak.
Yeah, well, my aim is to get one message out, that's it. So therefore, I don't need the slides.
Possibly one slide with that message as an endpoint, but yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's not educational. That's for sure. Which is why I decided for that, and I also couldn't decide which one to use.
Hey.
What's on now?
Your video camera.
It's when this joins the
What's the laptop? So is it the screen? Okay. We're using it to speak right.
Try now.
Oh, no,
Try now.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I know the answer. We've got Zoom settings inside Zoom
Yeah.
that are not being, that are basically overriding the overall computer. So what I've now done is I've turned off the mic and the speaker inside Zoom.
Is that because you're the host?
Possibly, but I don't know. But that's what I've just done. So I went there because the problem came back when I joined this computer to Zoom.
Oh, but no, this is the host. This one's kicked off.
But this one is also in the meeting, the screen sharing. Both of these are in Zoom. So I'm in the meeting twice, essentially.
Yeah.
But now we're okay.
So, if you turn the speaker up, you would actually still hear us, wouldn't you?
This speaker, you want me to turn it back on?
Yeah. Because this is David going to the kitchen.
Try it out.
Hello?
Right?
So in other words,
Okay. So it's the Zoom
No.
sound settings that are causing that howl.
my question is, just pretend you took that to the kitchen or to another house on this street. Are you hearing me? Because you should be.
Not at the moment.
But how would you do that? You'd actually change the Zoom setting.
I have to put Zoom settings, but then if I was
Oh, then you'll get
in
the
another
sound.
house, I wouldn't get the howl because
Yeah,
I'm not
alright.
close to you.
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
The howl is caused by the proximity of devices. As we gone on, I could have kissed Jeremy on Thursday night.
What happened when he sorted out
We sorted out Adam and the sound.
yeah,
I didn't know what the hell was going on.
that was really quite bizarre. Where did you find it?
He's actually spoken before. He spoke last January.
Yeah,
But he also spoke at something that Dale did.
And he did the same thing, crosswords? I
Yeah.
sorry, the
Not some process. I don't know.
that's just the time I've seen you that. That was good.
yeah. I could see how he did both. I couldn't see how he got them to Rubik's Cube. Because he touched his phone after I told him to work. Something happened. I think he just had to do something with the phone before he showed it to me. Bang, I put number 12.
So presumably what he's doing is setting Rubik's Cube to the number you choose.
Yeah, that's it.
The answer is going to be Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
So I bet if we had him back and he did the same presentation, we could choose 99 and 99 would be Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
And then the Rubik's Cube is down its sleeve or.
And then the noughts and crosses thing, you can see he puts the nought up first, right? So he's got the center thing.
Yeah.
Then the next X is going to be on one of the corners, right? That's 99.9% certain that
Yeah.
someone in the audience will go for a corner. Because if you go to a center spot on either of the,
You're
Sorry.
heading for a lot.
he'd be done.
Yes.
And it was
Because-
a lot anyway.
And I spotted this
Yeah.
on a couple of occasions. The person in the audience says, no, go to that square. And he misunderstands and guides you to where he wants you to put the X.
Yeah. Because you could make a silly mistake. I made a silly mistake because I wasn't paying attention. I'm going, if he asked me I was going to go there, I would have lost the game. And he would have lost he couldn't have done it. So, and it's very interesting, it was only the three on the horizontal that had anything on them that was meaningful. The top row, three and the bottom three were just edges, or corners. So he just had to turn the X so that it was the right corner.
And what you bet, if we looked at those X's on maybe one of the arms with a red spot or something, so he will know that.
Oh, yeah, he'll know how to do it without looking at it.
Yeah.
So you've got an X,
Yes,
and it can go that way, or that way, essentially.
Yeah. And there's a fault maybe, something's wrong with the black ink or a little red dot that allows him to orientate.
Or,
Yeah.
like, got a felt for
We
the
can't.
green.
Now,
But that-
if we,
So that solves that problem. The only one, and the other one, because I was sitting at a table with people, and I just went, that is amazing. You No, well, I mean, last night I was there with Rubik's Cube. I haven't touched a Rubik's Cube for donkey's years. Not that I go to bed with Rubik's Cubes by choice, but what actually happened? I pushed the button. Oh, yeah.
Good. I took the wrong way somewhere else, you know. Came back. Oh, God. I don't know, I just went straight.
You went where?
I went straight along this road, forgot this
Ah.
location. Yeah, that's me. Geographically challenged, we call it.
It's all right.
That's all right.
I'm a surveyor. I survey land, right?
There you
I
are.
finished my degree. No, I'm hopeless, right? We get lost. Anna goes, how the heck did you survey anything when you were a surveyor? We get lost all the time.
I get lost all the time.
But,
Are you okay?
Good.
Yeah.
Down to one top here,
Sorry?
down to one top here, three days before.
Okay.
Yeah, down to one top, so hopefully I can get, talk to, Andrew and Jill in the next couple of days. Maybe do a couple of education meetings, this will be through.
we should get them back here. Why wouldn't some of them might come here, so,
Or,
or they should stop Toastmasters.
Is it also hybrid too?
Yeah,
Yes, it is. Who is on the virtual screen?
probably no one. We spent
Oh.
20, half an hour setting it up.
I'm not right.
I'll be there.
Romani and Shivera, joining us today? Their apologies. Oh,
Culture apology and Indian late.
gosh.
So we've actually had a big crank back on
So it's only three?
and Teresa,
I know.
yeah, Teresa actually, I sent Teresa a text last night saying, we've just lost the speaker. Do you want to do an impromptu speech? I said, yeah, I'm in.
Is he coming in?
And he'll be here at 11. He has, he's got to sort out an issue with mortgage.
I have to go at 12, because I would attend to the appointment at 12:30 today.
Ideally at 12, not less.
12, not
12 should be fine.
Okay. It's 12:30, it's at 10 to, so I think that should give me time to reach.
Oh, yeah. As long as you don't get lost.
I know, this is my problem. And it's not as if I haven't come here before, you know. I don't know which word I said, why I was just writing on everything.
You daydream. You daydream. You paint.
I don't daydream, but I don't know what it is.
You know how sometimes you're driving a car and you get to your destination and you go, holy smoke, what happened? How did we get there?
Yeah.
You're in autopilot.
I don't know why I'm writing it.
I was in the car with my wife and she goes, Andy, where are we going? We're going on autopilot. Yes, we should be going that way.
Right, that's exactly what happened today. I think I could write all we're ready to go.
Yeah. We are ready.
So I need to watch.
Meeting is ended.
Yeah, so I will do, let me get the,
I've got my computer in my
Oh, did you fix it?
Yeah.
You didn't print it, did you, Jill, after all?
I don't have a picture.
I know, but I don't know how to use it. It's only when I'm at home that I know how to use it.
Hey,
That's embarrassing.
and I'm happy to come over and happy to find out.
Well, I could ask my wife as well, but
I don't know.
she hasn't shown you before.
They're around money.
So she's got an app on her phone, and I just email stuff to her. She's in the house, I think you print it for me in her email.
You can get it,
She just prints it.
And
Yeah,
she was she's a chairman today.
she was.
She was, yeah. She was chairman last week. Yeah.
Oh, and then she didn't come.
Yeah.
I know. That's not good.
It's not good. No, but what is this? I mean, is other commitments there? The money?
She picked up another client, but she already had a client with us.
Oh. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? She already had our commitment.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Maybe she doesn't check her email. She doesn't check her email. She obviously doesn't have diary. She told me she was texting out that wasn't happening. And I said, the other reason I didn't really relax at me because I decided not to talk to her because I was so annoyed. Okay, so who is MC?
I don't mind being, do you want to get
So, okay, so has David got the introduction? Did you see I updated your introduction for it?
Why did you update it? What was wrong with it?
You didn't follow the formula.
Oh, okay. I reread it, I went, that's a good introduction, I'm sure I wrote that.
No, you read the first paragraph, I added to it.
Oh,
So I did this,
oh,
which is your key, final line.
see, all right, so you've got introduction, David.
I'm doing
I did see today on,
You do having those up, I'm just waiting.
David, you've organised it.
Yeah. I'm
When
working.
you can see it, off the top of my head, no, I know it's on the agenda of the last several meetings. Okay, just the area wants to go on. Because my son is getting married on the first of the end, anyway. We're driving for that. But it's not that much. It's not that, it's 16 today, so it's bringing. Okay, well, I'll be going down to 24 to 26 together. So that, you know, we're all driving from the.
But David, first thing, first thing.
Will you get married with him? Why do we would hold up on you, because.
No, we just.
And now again, we schedule from here, and again, then you call. Like, oh boy. Like, why do you, because they met in Melbourne, this was good enough. Okay. We still have time, okay? But, you know, three of us have been here since 8:45.
I mean, this is,
No.
I'm never like.
What do you do?
Okay, now, how do we use these cards for anybody joining online? I think someone will have to read the question to them.
Yeah.
If there is anyone that joins.
Sort of hold them up to the camera, another way.
That. Yes, so,
Why are we still doing this online?
well, to be honest, I am that close to giving up.
Yeah, but why are we doing this? You know, most clubs have stopped it and everybody's using it. Why are we doing what it's do?
Maybe we should stop.
I don't think we should. I mean, who are we expecting to come virtually on?
And this is the point, you know, Linda's an apology, those overseas people came twice, and then we haven't heard from them.
No, we don't.
It's too much, I think, and this is what I said a month or more ago. I think, you know, it's fundamentally David, Andrew and me that are putting the effort in. Romani, Shavira and Linda are benefiting. And that to me is a completely broken equation.
Somebody in Shivara can come along, you know, I mean, they are, I think, doing, and everybody's starting everywhere now.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't know whether we should actually put this out to board.
Yeah.
When technically,
What Pushpa's saying is, I think we have proven that we can do it and we can do it well. And maybe we should say, right, job done.
Yes.
We know what the setup is. If there was a good enough reason for coming back, we could do it.
And that's another thing I want to tell you, because when I was the ruler club last time, they had 7 new guests, okay, 7 guests, out of which 5 signed up to become members. Now, I was very intrigued, like, how is happening? They have a good website going, right? They have a good Facebook page. If somebody is, you know, technically advanced and can do it, I think we must need to kind of, I even told this to Sarvara, improve of I don't know, like, our website is fine with it, I don't think there's any problem. But maybe a Facebook page, because, you know, one of the guest locations I was meeting told us, I find it so difficult to find you guys. And we were like, what happened? And because there are 2, 3 websites existing that are set up by some other member as a business thing. And
This is one of the things that I'm
and I
scared
think
about.
that, and I'm just on Facebook initiative, you know, so.
Yeah. There is so much more to being found through social media than throwing up a page.
Yeah.
When you put a page up, you're essentially entering into a long-term commitment. And if the long-term commitment is people you don't even know often.
I think so. I think we can, if somebody can work on that Facebook page, and, you know, I don't have to say that I have to put up pictures or anything, just putting up, you know, we had an exciting meeting last night, and this was it, you would like to join us, please, things like that, you know.
Pictures are actually essential.
Yeah, but then there's a private meeting there, you know. No. Pictures of members.
But, yes, but once you start understanding how and I don't know it in detail, but I probably know it better than a lot. Once you acknowledge how the search algorithms work, you need pictures with alt tags, and the pictures must have permission of everyone.
That's it.
This is why I held off. But I suspect that one of the reasons that we're not getting yet is, firstly, I think Saturday morning is busy for a lot of people, and it's family time. But if the club wants to change that, fine, as I said earlier. I know that it has to be a weekend for me. Yeah.
Sunday is fine by me, but then Sunday is clashes at Edinburgh. That was great, that Sunday, you know?
Is it?
It
Okay.
is, and many people were coming to say that they were able to come because it was a Sunday.
And that's
Yeah, and they got no commitments, no work commitments, and
Yeah.
plus the weekend is really old. So,
Because I know this church, often on a Sunday afternoon, is great, like they were originally going to do at 6 o'clock.
They don't have a service on Sunday night.
No, they used to have it at 6 o'clock, but there's no.
you can think about that, and think about Sunday as an option.
But Allura, they
It is social media.
Well, yes and no, because if we change the date, we have no obligation to stay on the third.
Yeah, they are on the first,
They're first and third.
third, and if there is a fifth happening, they are.
So the simple answer is if we move to Sunday, we move to
Second Sunday.
probably second.
Yeah. I'm just saying, it's also a good option if you want to consider it. The thing is to analyze why it is that we are not growing in this thing. But for some people, it's
But
not.
I think there's multiple things. I certainly think Saturday morning, is part of it.
Yeah.
But the other thing, and again, if the club wants to change that, fine, the very fact that we are focused on longer stitching, which is, to me, is the bedrock of the club.
But this
But a lot of
advanced club should attract people who are already Toastmasters, not rank newcomers.
Absolutely, but I think a combination of those two things. I think Saturday morning rules it out for a number of people. And I think there's a lot of advanced Toastmasters who don't want to do long speeches.
Okay, but that's a choice.
So you don't, I mean,
You want to do something else.
even make it 7 to 10, you don't have to stretch it to 20 and 25 if you don't want to.
And maybe a job will make that, maybe that's an option there on the website.
How long is speeches are in the last 12 months? They've been 15 minutes, sorry.
15 to 20.
20 is probably the max.
Yes, I mean, I could take longer and there are times when I'd like to, but
I think, okay, so this should be our last virtual.
I think so.
Yeah,
So
okay.
then next, in March, we get into the investor setup, obviously going there for that, and then let you guys in, set up the board, trade
Yeah. Well, Shavira's been to meetings for the client commitment Saturday morning.
No, she actually was at the meeting last month, but I let rip because I told her that the MC was the one role that you've got to be in the room for. And she managed to misunderstand that, even though I told her face to face.
I thought, well, it's probably because of COVID, they're not coming, but it's not that, they are, I mean, they are going everywhere, they to the people.
Yeah,
So they are going to other places, so it's not COVID that is living there.
today, well, I think it's two things today. I think Shavira relies quite heavily on her parents for transport for a lot of things. And today, in the Oxley context, Romani is involved in
What context?
Oxford.
Oh, yeah.
Eric? Or is that a
Well,
class?
Oxley will be a division.
Oh, well, division one day.
They did all their areas, I don't know,
Wow.
Oxley always,
Division one day. Oh, wow. I mean,
if it's Oxley, it's got to be a division. I mean, I suppose it could be an area within Oxley area content.
yeah.
But strictly,
Actually, you know, this is 17, I mean, 1970, I don't know.
I announced in 69, our division concept is over in February. Division
And you can do it, you know, the rules allow you to do that. The issue is clubs getting their act together. And
but we did get our act together because there was a deadline to meet, you know, and so,
but it's also once you get into a pattern, once you know that this is how things happen.
the only time when that has changed is because of the cyclone season in Queensland. And sometimes in February there are cyclones, and so we have to shift it to March, and those kind of things will happen to us. I don't tell you when that happens there, meeting was cancelled, conference was cancelled at the last minute because the cyclone came. Oh, and we gave off cyclone, and, yes,
I'm presuming some people
You
have got
lose your
it.
yes. Last minute cancellation.
Okay, here's the timing wise, do we
Or
want
did
that?
the council cancel the conference?
The division cancelled the conference, we couldn't hold it, it was in Mackay, and Mackay is being hit by that. And so, for me to travel to Alice Springs, I have to come from Alice Springs to Sydney, and Sydney to Mackay, there is no direct flight.
Yeah.
And-
Didn't the airline cancel the flight as well?
We cancelled up to Sydney, we couldn't fly to Sydney.
It wasn't one ticket.
It was one ticket, but you know, they said that they could refund the Sydney fare, and they didn't refund the Mackay fare, but not the Sydney fare.
You need.
I mean, I'm telling them that I'm not coming to Sydney for a pleasure job, you know, I'm going.
I'm going to Mackay.
Yeah, hey, that's okay.
That was interesting.
I was very annoyed.
Yeah, well, the airline should have been a lot more
Yeah.
compassionate.
They are now, okay.
Yeah, COVID, they're very compassionate now.
The government's giving them money.
Yes. But at that time, Qantas was doing the rules, and what they said was law.
Yeah.
But, so this is the last hybrid meeting.
Yeah, look, when we made that decision, we didn't know where, you know, we're still on the track of coming back. We're now actually pretty much on the way back.
Content will be virtual.
I know the content has to be virtual with America dictates what goes on around the world.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, for us in Australia, we all prefer not to do virtual content. We want to be up on the stage.
But, yeah, but CIA was laid out,
They lay it out for America. And then the rest, I mean, America had no COVID. They would have said, okay, you have to be president. You know, it's like,
One minute voting time, when we,
you know, one
when,
minute.
when you get to turn up.
no. What are you saying?
Three,
The only other person that we're expecting is Therese.
3 weeks or something now.
this should be it.
Yeah, we can wait, you know.
Oh, wait.
I might do it for two, it's not going to be a relaxed meeting. We can turn the cameras off at 10 past 9.
I don't know what couple people later, but what are the dates that I think very some people were in. Really exciting this, sitting in the same chair. Yeah. Have you ever read Open National Poem?
No.
Like there are some poetry that are typically, some that are meant, but the one that is very strange, it's in the meter.
Oh, great.
Alicia, good.
Mm.
Maybe.
I sent out an invite to that whole group. The group that everyone said it makes this club. So have you accepted him?
I haven't in the meeting. No.
Adam?
This is cool. This will be interesting.
Mm.
But, we just,
Okay. Is there anyone else in the waiting room? Just Craig. So David, keep in mind where you are on the stage.
yeah,
Remember that?
yeah,
You'll see yourself in the little camera.
yeah.
You can see me all right now.
I'll wait till,
Actually, can you see me on the? Oh, yeah, you can.
Can you speak to Craig?
Craig, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Nice of you to join us. When were you last at Keynoters? Have you been in the last year or just, yep?
Say that again.
Good to see you, mate.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you visited us, how long ago? About 3 or 4 months ago?
This is my first time.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay. So that's great. Well, we've got a meeting organised. We've got the rest of the clubs here at the moment. We've got a few people that couldn't make it.
Okay.
But really glad to have you along.
Okay, thank you.
Now we'll probably get things going now, hopefully.
Okay.
And David's going to be our MC for the day, and he'll kick the meeting off.
Okay.
So keep going. We'd have to go to the way. Must be the one next to that. It is the one next to that.
Yeah.
All right.
Now I'd like to call the meeting number, now what meeting number is this now?
One more than last month.
I've forgotten the number, but oh well. Now, today we've got a modified agenda. Can I borrow your agenda, Henry?
Yeah. Well, no, I can modify it. Yeah, you can have to modify it on the fly.
Sorry there, Craig. Now let's see, I'm the MC for the meeting, change from Shavira, then President's welcome Jill as per usual. Inspirational Last Master.
We'll scrap that.
Scrap.
Unless you would like to take that on, Craig.
Would you like to talk about Craig?
I'm actually only here for just 1 hour, so yes.
Okay. You want to do that like a little joke thing on the agenda?
I'm not good at jokes, yeah.
Okay, no worries, Craig. We'll leave it then. We'll skip the inspiration. Then Jill Walker, first speech. Then facilitator is Cotton, but who wants to be facilitator?
Facilitator for who?
For Jill's speech?
I think, oh, I'm right.
Or do you want to do both?
I'll do it, mate.
I'm going to put myself surprised that I do this one too.
Oh, no, we could have been general early.
Yes.
Okay.
And then
So Andrew.
And you're booking.
Yeah.
speaker 2 is me. Then facilitator 2. Any volunteers? Yep, and then the scribe is Colton, and Colton's not here.
I can do that too.
Yep. And then there's the morning tea break at 10:53. Table topics is Jill.
Yep.
Filling in. Table topics for review is Romani, and she's not here.
We need someone to review if we can afford that.
I can do it.
Which one?
And then speaker 3 is Andrew Deck. And facilitator is Jill. I'm happy to be scribe 3.
Okay, so Andrew and I are doing each other's favours today.
And then speaker 4 is Tereen. And then facilitator, I'm happy to facilitate that. Or do you want me to do scribe?
Whichever you want to.
I'll do scribe.
What's that? Okay.
And facilitator Jill. And then the timers report, are we even going to bother with the timers today? Or? No timers report.
Well,
Sooner we'll evaluate it.
You keep approximate
said I could do it, I will be here. So,
And general evaluator is Andrew Deck.
Yeah.
And then I close the meeting at 12:41, but it might finish early.
Give or take, I think we should not worry overly about timing.
Okay.
So now I'd like to hand over to the president today, Jill Walker.
I'm not going to take much of anyone's time. I just want to extend a welcome to everyone and huge thanks to those people who were here to get us set up for the hybrid meeting. I'll now hand back to David to run us through the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Jill, for that wonderful president's introduction. Now I'd like to introduce the guest today, Craig Curtis. If Craig could tell us a bit about himself.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I've been a Toastmaster member since July of 2014, and I'm coming to you from District 95, which consists of Germany, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. I'm coming to you from Frankfurt, Germany, and currently I'm the District 95 Division F Public Relations Manager, and currently I'm a member of 6 clubs. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Craig. Well done. Now, today I'd like to introduce our first speaker for this meeting is Jill Walker. And Jill's speech, let me just see, is the Pathways, Motivational Strategies, Understanding Your Communication Style. Communication is essential, but it, and when it fails, is also the root of many problems. In this presentation, Jill will explain how to highlight the understanding communication can help you avoid problems. This presentation will be illustrated with personal stories, with communications and styles and pitfalls. Please welcome Jill Walker.
Thank you, David. I promised Andrew that I would do the level 2 Understand Your Communication Style project, and I decided to put a little bit of a twist on it, as I often do. Communication, as we all know, exists throughout the natural kingdom. It is, although this slide is largely, if not totally, animals, it is actually not even restricted to animals. There is significant evidence that there is communication of sorts within the plant world. But there is certainly a lot of communication in the animal world, from bees and other tiny insects and smaller who communicate about presence or absence of food, presence or absence of danger, right the way through to our largest friends within the animal kingdom, for whom it is a key part of their life. There is also significant evidence now that it is our ability as humans to take that communication skill, both language and non-verbal communication, to a level significantly higher, we believe, than the majority of other animals, that has led to us moving from animals, as we see on the left, one of the more advanced members of the animal kingdom, through to us as human beings as we know us today. And we have very much developed our communication skills. We have got communication that transpires is the wrong word, exists across ages. Any one of us, if we so chose, could go and read material that was originally written certainly several hundred, and in some cases 1,000 or more years ago. In other words, many, many lifetimes or generations ago. More recently, really in the last 100-ish years, we have got communication that links us to people that we cannot see. I am sure that most people, if not everybody in this room, have made a telephone call to people that they cannot see at the time, and probably people in other countries. And over the last decade or so, that has morphed even further to not only us having sound communication that goes across borders, but visual communication across borders. In fact, even this morning, we have welcomed to our meeting Craig, who is joining us, who I hope can see me and my slides from Germany. And he is as much with us as the 6 of us in this room here in Sydney. So communication is very much our connection, and getting it right is the key to personal and career success. And that is one of the quotes that I'm going to use this morning, and that one comes from Paul J. Meyer. But I'm sure that everybody will agree that much of our success in our personal life and in our career is down to our ability to communicate. And we might even go as far as saying our failures in those areas of life are attributed to when we fail at communication. When I was working through this workshop as provided by Toastmasters, the model that Toastmasters uses is 4 different types of communication. And I chose to arrange them in this order because, as I've alluded to already, communication aids us in many, many ways. It aids us in being the humans that we are. But I'm now going to explain a little bit about what these 4 aspects or 4 methods of communication are. So the first is analytical, and the second is an initiating communication method. The third is direct, and the 4th is supportive. I'm going to give you just a moment without doing any detailed work, and I'm certainly not going to give you one of those psychometric type tests, but I'd like you just for a moment to think which of those 4 you fall into. I'm not going to ask you to answer the question out loud. I'd like you to just think about it. Knowing the style that you, or in my case, as the person doing the workshop, I fall into, is absolutely essential if, when we communicate, we are going to get our message across. Whether we're communicating one-on-one, as here, and this looks to be a fairly positive communication. This one is still one-on-one, but I think it's a fair bet that it's a little bit less positive than the previous example. Now we've got a group communication and finally a large group communication. So when we're talking about the style of communication, we immediately have a matrix. We've got our communication style, and we've got the style that the recipients of that communication want to be communicated in. So theoretically, we now have 16 different communication models. Except we actually have far more than 16, because every one of us has aspects of analytical, initiating, supportive, and direct communication. And so what we have is however many different variants we can get of those four to make up a whole, and that is going to be some big number regardless, and then we take that big number and we square it because the other side is the recipient. And this is understanding that the huge possible combinations of getting our message across from the style that we natively use, from a style that we can encourage ourselves to use to meet the needs of the audience, is why this quote from George Bernard Shaw, I think, is so apt. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. I did promise you earlier that I would give you some personal stories. I'm going to leave this one a little bit anonymous, but how many of us have had an experience where we would swear on a stack of holy whatever we choose to swear on, but we told another person something, or maybe asked them something, and they have got no knowledge whatsoever, or at least they claim to have no knowledge whatsoever of the message in question. And whenever that happens, and I think, and again, I'm not actually going to ask you to do this, but I think if I did ask you to raise your hand, if you could explain an example of that in the last 24, certainly 48 hours, I think if we were being honest, we've probably all got an example of that sort of thing. So I'm now going to look at my communication styles and how they pan out. Anybody that has known me for more than, I'm tempted to say 5 minutes, but no, I'll be a little bit more generous. I'll take that up to about a month. Is probably not surprised that I come out very heavily on the direct style. I am very much say it how it is, and if you don't like that, do it. In fact, I have said to clients on more than one occasion that I wasn't put on this planet to be loved. I was put on this planet to get a job done. And one of the ways that I can do that is through my direct communication style. But I can also safely say that I have been marched off projects and marched out of client sites for being too direct. So one example that comes to mind, many years ago, probably about 25 years ago, before I came to Australia, I was doing some work in Southampton, and this was basic word training. And I told somebody who happened to be a senior manager, mistake number 2 in this particular scenario, that they were doing it all wrong. And why didn't they think about doing whatever it was, this way, that way, the other way? That was the end of my engagement. I was definitely too direct. And reflecting on that experience, I have moderated on that. So I'm still pretty direct, but not as direct as I used to be. I am also very analytical. I am less analytical than I am direct, but I am able to explain to other people the detail of how things that I know about do work. What's happened? And I also frequently get frustrated by other people's struggles to take on board that level of analytical information. And that in and of itself is something that I could talk about for a long period of time. And it also has got me into trouble on occasion. Equally, I am, and this surprised me, I can be very supportive. So when I did the questionnaire within the Toastmasters project, I came out as equally supportive and analytical. But I think if I'm being honest, the supportive side does require effort. So I can kick myself into a supportive mode, and as such, I can help people one-on-one. But I do know that within my professional speaking, the area of professional speaking that I need to work on most is encouragement. And that is really an aspect of being supportive. And the area that I came out lowest of the 3 is initiating. And that, again, is very true. I don't like confrontation. And thinking back over my life, I can remember many, many instances when I probably should have had a difficult conversation with somebody, and I should have been the person who took that on board, but I didn't. And I have probably paid the price on a number of occasions. These 4 are one way of looking at communication. And there are many, many other ways of looking at it. Some of them, when I did a small amount of research yesterday, are fundamentally synonyms of these 4 words. Other ways are splitting the model, slicing it and dicing it differently. But certainly, I do think that understanding your natural mode of communication, understanding which of the modes you can call on when you need, and perhaps more importantly than either of those, is understanding that what matters is not your natural communication style, but understanding how the person or the people to whom you are speaking want to be communicated to, and having the flexibility to adopt 1, 2, maybe 3 of those to meet the needs of your audience. And in closing, I would like to end with this quote from Plato. So here's another example of what I said earlier. This is where we all have the ability to read something probably from 2,500 years ago. So wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools because they have to say something. And I think we could change those because to when. and it might be even more appetite. And with that, I will hand back to our MC tonight, David.
Thank you, Jill, for such entertaining and informative speech with those personal stories. Such a great insight, especially that last quote from Plato. I should take that on board. Now, today for the facilitation, today is Andrew for the facilitation and Therese for the scribe.
Therese? No.
Okay.
Yeah, you were. Okay. Okay.
In world election around here.
The content delivery improvement?
Yeah.
Yes.
Content, delivery and
To
improvement.
be honest, I think more emphasis on the improvement, although considering it probably only 16 hours since I started working on it.
Yeah, nice work, Jill. So, Craig, for your benefit, in this club, we don't do evaluations with one person and they're not timed for the normal timing period. What we do is we do it as a group. And we have a facilitator, which in this case is myself, and a scribe, and we whiteboard the solution.
Hi, Craig. We had Craig join us before.
Yeah, I think Craig came about 3 or 4 months ago.
No. I've never been here.
Okay.
Yes, I haven't been here. This is my first time.
Yeah, you're very familiar from the Zoom, and I remember you in the Zoom from Germany.
Okay. Maybe it was at another club.
No, I'm only in this one. It was definitely you. And
Okay.
a lawyer from Mexico, but I'm not going to argue with you. But I remember you and your voice as soon as I heard it.
So, Craig, you're a member of 7 clubs, and you visit how many clubs?
Oh, I visit a lot of clubs. I have a Toastmaster meeting Monday through Sundays.
Yeah.
And then after this meeting, I'm getting ready to go to Canada.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
And then in the morning, I've got to get up and go to Denmark. No, I take that back. I'm going to a workshop in Vienna, then I'm going to Denmark. Yeah.
Well, I remember you gave us wonderful feedback last time, so I do remember.
Okay.
All right, so who wants to kick off with the feedback? Pushpa.
Thank you. Do I have some?
Yeah.
Focusing on improvement?
Yeah.
Or improvement only? Focusing on, yes.
Oh,
That concept, that's the only improvement.
what works well?
I'm open to take it a phrase, but that's what I want.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Jill's speech today, which focused on the 4 styles of communication, took us through those 4 styles using very personal examples. And I believe that personal examples always contribute to the success of a speech because it generates empathy in the listener. And that is what happened today. I particularly loved the honesty in some of those examples and the fact when Jill said that when it was revealed to her during her, when she was going through these 4 styles, when it was revealed to her that she was a supportive person, it surprised her. Now there was such a lot of humor in that I'm surprised that I'm really supportive. And yet Jill said in all her candor that, yes, it's one area that I really need to work on is to support others and to be more encouraging. I really like that. The one area that I didn't understand was that I think at the end she said that it was revealed that, no, she doesn't like to be confrontational. You don't like confrontation. And yet I believe that if you are a direct person, you cannot avoid confrontation. Yes, direct speakers or direct communicators confrontation is right up your alley. So that was one part that slightly confused me, that when you're direct, you would have had a lot of confrontations along the way. And so to be non-confrontational was a bit, that was the only area that I felt that there was a little variation from what was said earlier. Because Jill spoke about herself being as direct, and as a result of that, being shunted out of certain things. And that was, again, very amusing to listen to, but at the same time, that honesty was so appealing. So thank you very much, Jill. Over to you. Over to you.
Okay.
Thank
you, Krista. Thank you, Krista. David or Craig, do you have any feedback? Craig, did you want to
No,
add something?
let David go first. Let David go first.
I actually thought that Jill's speech today was fantastic. Great how she put the personal stories in and the old quotes from Plato from years and years ago to show how even back then in today's society that knowledge from all those years ago is actually relevant in today's society, which I think is really good, so that we can see even the wise people back then can actually, that knowledge and their thoughts are actually useful today, which is, for me, very, very empowering to see how that knowledge is brought into today's society, because often we don't often use the knowledge from years gone by in today's society. So I think that really brings home the message that we should listen to what happened in history and what people have said in the past. To me, that's really empowering and really inspirational. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Craig, did you have any feedback?
Yes. Can Jill come forward?
Oh, okay.
Because I can't see everybody in the room. Yes. I just wanted to thank her for her speech. You did a wonderful job with your speech. The only thing is, when you get to the communication styles, maybe just throw out to the audience, what do you think your communication style is to have just a little bit of audience engagement? That's all. But a wonderful speech this morning from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And when you said, can Jill come forward, you did mean for her to come forward, or were you saying she needed to be closer to the camera?
Oh, no. I was just asking so I could see her in the camera. Yes. I just wanted to talk to her directly. Yes.
Nice. All right.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Well, from my perspective, I'll throw something. Did you want to say something to that? Okay. So from my perspective, I thought her speech, that Jill had a nicely structured speech. It's always well structured when Jill does a presentation. She took us on a journey. She started with the animal world, the animal kingdom, and brought us through to modern day. And I liked the use of quotes. But I also liked the fact that she got a clear message across. For me, the message was that we need to not only understand our own communication style, we need to understand the recipient's style in terms of receiving the message. So for me, that was my big takeaway, knowing that, and you did it really well. It's crystal clear. I like the one-to-many relationship of there are 4 different styles and you've got 16 people in the room, you've got 16 times 4 different styles of recipients, so you've got to work that out. Really important for us in Toastmasters to know who we're speaking to, so I really like that, really clear and concise. With Jill, I always wanted to be more animated and things like that. There's some of the things that I'm looking for, because she's she's got a great style in terms of getting the message across, and it is direct. We saw that.
Yes, thank you. I agree with all these wonderful comments, personal examples, stories, also love stories, and all of those things. I thought the same initially, Pushpa. Often I feel I think like Pushpa, and so I thought, oh, direct, but she's backing off and she's shy with the initiating. But then I thought, I obviously don't know enough about the 4 distinct styles, because there's 4 distinct styles and they're the headings. And I thought, oh, there must be something special about not wanting to initiate. But I did have that first thought as well, Pushpa. My only thing is, I guess you can polarize your audience with a slide about evolution, and for me, that's not for me. So for me, that's not what I believe.
So you can polarise. I think you can talk without that slide, because it can initially people go, okay, and then they might switch off. I don't, because I value everything you say, but for me, not the slide for me. Yeah. Can we take a photo?
Yeah, okay. Well, that concludes the facilitation section, so thanks everyone who's contributed, and I'll turn back to David. Oh, next general. Oh, it's yours.
Introducing myself. Now for the fun part is introducing yourself for the speech.
I could introduce you.
Do you want to introduce?
Yeah, I'll introduce you. Sorry about that, so a bit of sweat changes there. So David's doing the next speech. David's speech is a Pathways Motivational Strategy speech, understanding your communication. It's a 5 to 7 minute speech. Are you sticking to 5 to 7 minutes, or are you needing a whisker longer?
Probably
A whisker longer? He's redoing it.
No, this is the introduction to Toastmasters mentoring.
Okay, introduction to Toastmasters mentoring.
Mentoring.
Yes, mentoring. Okay.
Sorry, I'm reading the wrong one.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, my apologies. Okay, so David Hunter's doing Presentation Mastery 2, Introduction to Toastmasters Mentoring, 5 to 7 minutes, but it's going to be a whisker longer. My mentoring experience. Sometimes mentoring doesn't turn out the way you originally intended. So please welcome David with his speech on my mentoring experience. Welcome, David.
Thank you,
Hang on. Did we get a photo of that?
I didn't, but I've got the video anyway.
We can edit it out. Sorry, I shouldn't jump the gun.
I'll let you get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, myself, fellow Toastmasters, and Curtis all the way from Germany. Today's story is to the question, does Toastmasters mentoring often turn out the way you actually intended it to be? My answer for today's purpose is actually no. Sometimes you put in situations where the roles are actually reversed. But let's start with my Toastmasters journey way back in 2017 at another club, just as one son of a one. At first, I was that shy, nervous, hiding behind a lectern, using notes. And then as I get more confident, thanks to the encouragement of members, I actually lost the notes, started to move around the stage and actually get far more confident. Just from the encouragement of members. Mind you, that was a coaching thing rather than a mentoring. And then I just started to gain the confidence of other members, actually encouraging, inspiring other members to keep up their good work. And my other club members, but probably won't talk about that today, it got really inspired and they really encouraged, giving them the stakes to give them the skills to speak up. So fast forward to December 19, when I was at a human rights conference through work. The day before, I spoke to the facilitator and said, I'd like to put my hand up for anything if you could if you need any help. So sort of like a coach type thing to give them advice, give them help if anything goes wrong. So then the next day, things just went well, but didn't go to plan. CEO's plane was cancelled because of IT issues with Jetstar, and then the Keynoters the keynote speakers didn't have enough material to fill a 45 minutes. During that keynote, the facilitator asked me, David, do you mind doing a 5 to 8 minute speech on your peer mentoring again, experience? And went really well. People actually commented, other speakers in the speech, even the CEO said, hey, I really like David's way of thinking. And one of the other speakers said, I really like what David said. So that was really inspiring. Them actually getting the feedback from me. But the most important thing was, one of the people that I had dinner with the night before in dessert said, David, you need to come down to Melbourne. I want to be as competent speaker as you. So then COVID hit, started on Skype. She actually said 3 things that she wanted to do. So wanted to become a better speaker, overcome her shyness, and then also how to relate to people with disabilities. Mind you, I thought this is a bit strange. 3 things, Toastmasters think 3 things. So we started off via Zoom once a month, doing that thing. But then the second meeting via Zoom, I thought to myself, I need to do something a little bit outrageous outside the box to help this person overcome her shyness. I actually did the webinar with 2 other people by Skype this time, not Zoom, in my pajamas, dressing gown, Ugg boots and beanie, for the purpose of actually getting out, thinking outside the box, not to actually think to those other people saying, I don't think I can do this. Yes, you can. It's thinking outside the box, doing something so outrageous that they'll think, why is this guy in his pajamas? Why isn't he dressing gown, Ugg boots and beanie? It's to prove the point that the most important thing for me is not what other people think of me, but what I think of myself. That's the really powerful thing. But then, as the mentoring goes on, I wasn't actually mentoring this person down in Melbourne. With the webinars and the mentoring sessions, she was actually indirectly mentoring me to help me in my speaking journey and giving me ideas. It was just somehow or another, it was a light bulb moment, and she was actually mentoring me. So and this year I was doing a speech for Keynoters a couple of like last year or the year before, and was writing it on a whiteboard. And I actually said, it doesn't actually belong on a whiteboard, it belongs on a t-shirt. So a bit of coaching from people like Jill has actually inspired me to actually say, hey, it belongs on a shirt. So sometimes coaching and mentoring can actually be blurred. It's just really inspiring for me to see how some people can actually change other people's perception. For example, one example or 2 examples that I'd like to use from December last year in terms of me mentoring outside Toastmasters, using that skill. One of the guys, I work for a disability organisation, one guy said to me, is intellectually quite intellectually challenged in that. He actually said to me, David, can you put my jumper on for me? I thought to myself, this guy's in his 30s. Why hasn't anyone actually thought that he can't put his jumper on? Instead of saying that, I said to him, hey, Jimmy, would you like to learn how to put your jumper on? He said, yes. 2 attempts later, he can now put his jumper on, and is that more, Danny Packaging, is that more productive because of that one skill? As one of my mentors, Jill Walker, has said to me, once you learn one skill, you're more open to learn more and more skills. One of the classic examples for me is the whiteboard. One day when this was before COVID hit, we were short of a facilitator, sort of a scribe, and Jill said to me, David, do you think you could do the scribe? I actually said, my handwriting's terrible. I don't think I can do it. I don't want to do it. And then she actually said to me, David, you want to turn into Cain, you want to believe in yourself. So get up and do it. So I actually did it, and I actually feel so proud of myself to actually do it. It's the only way to improve is actually to get out there, have a go, and do it, and practice. For me, that's a really good piece of advice from coaching from Jill, and I really appreciate it. That she actually got me out of my comfort zone to actually believe in me to do it. And for me, that's really inspiring. People at Toastmasters and that have said, and also Toastmasters, gee, I wish I could be as competent speaker as you. I got an award last week at work for being a human rights warrior. The CEO jokes because he knows I'm a Toastmaster. His daughter used to go to Toastmasters. David, I'll give you 30 seconds to speak. So, bit of joking from the CEO, but it's really empowering and inspiring. The closing message that I'd like to leave is helping each individual believe in themselves, believe that they can actually do something, achieve more than they're currently doing, and just believing in yourself. So, in closing, the mentoring sometimes doesn't end up the way you think a situation is going to end up. Enjoy life and just enjoy the ride. Now I'd like to hand over to the facilitator.
Okay.
You want to facilitate or okay, well, I don't mind. Okay. All right. I get to be called for one, or you want to write, or
I'm going to get my notes.
Yep. I did get my bag with the.
So do you want to write it? Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't mind either. Okay. I like describing. David, did you want to? Hi, Grace. Delivery improvement, just improve, or do you want to?
What did you call?
Just freestyle. All right.
Freestyle.
All right. Any feedback?
So what do we?
Freestyle, any feedback? Just any feedback. So, David's speech today on mentoring styles. Would anybody like to lead the feedback that we're going to give David today? Thank you. Andrew, is that you? No, sorry. Did you raise your hand?
Are you starting?
Okay, it's Jill. So Jill is going to give us some feedback. Thank you, Jill.
I think I can honestly say, David, that is the best speech you have ever given. So some of that has come through those stories that you've used previously. That's absolutely fine. And I think if you can take the stories that are newer to us and give them the level of polish that the ones that we've heard before have benefited from, you've got a real corker of a keynote there, or part of a keynote. Well done.
Thank you, Jill. And I'm sure David appreciates that positive feedback that he has got. The best speech is really saying something. Anybody else who would like to contribute either to the positive or probably the points of improvement for David's speech? I'd just like to say one thing. I particularly liked David telling us about his initial experiences in speaking. And he says that the first time when he was called, he was hiding behind the lectern. It was such a personal anecdote that it allowed us to feel David's nervousness at the time, his hesitation at the time, because what it did there was that David showed it to us. He didn't tell it to us, he showed it. And showing rather than telling always has the impact. It was amazing. Thank you, David.
Yeah, I wrote something important. I agree. I think that was wonderful.
and so brave, and I love how you've always got a smile on your face, like always smiling, and I just think it's so lovely in the audience. So a couple of things I thought, and maybe it's because you're really humble, you sort of glossed over, when you were giving that feedback, when people said it went really well, you kind of just hit it in between other sentences. Yes, they said it went really well. You went really soft, and everyone like, be proud that it went really well. So don't rush over that little bit that's so important. And you did the same when you said, it doesn't belong on what you said, it belongs on, and you didn't even finish the sentence. You just sort of, no, I don't want to make that the big piece. But I think you do, you need to honour it and give it the time, give it the big voice, finish the sentence, let us hear it. I got really good feedback. Yeah, well, I got some feedback. Like, I got really good feedback, and just hold it there. So I thought you hit a couple of the really good things. And you could maybe, yeah, that's all.
And I think that's wonderful advice that's coming from Therese there, where she's asking David to own his strengths.
Own the strengths as well
as the praise. Yes, everything. Own everything. Because when you own, that's when you develop. And that's a great thing. Fantastic. Anybody else in our small group today?
One small point as an option that David could take on if you would like.
Yes. Jill, Kevin would call.
Jill has to go around the world to come here.
The comment that you made about the T-shirt, David, certainly if you were doing that as a keynote, I am wondering whether you could get a really nice takeout or a nice reaction by not wearing the T-shirt, but having it available. And if I can borrow this and pretend it's a T-shirt, almost taking that line, that doesn't belong on a whiteboard, it belongs on a T-shirt.
And I have a T-shirt.
You, obviously, I mean, that's a piece of paper.
Yeah.
You need to have the T-shirt and then,
Now,
and I think that could work particularly, and this would depend on the conference that you're at, but if, take what I was saying on Thursday night, back of the room sales, if you're selling those.
Now, question guys, on the Jonas dressing gown.
You would have to come up here, David. Come.
Now, I would like the audience's information in that. If I'm talking about confidence and believing in themselves, that photo of me dressing gown like this, pajamas and beanie, in a boardroom at work, do you reckon if I put that on a mug to sell those mugs, do you reckon that would actually work? Would people buy that sort of thing?
Yeah. I think you could use the photo, but not in the way that you're suggesting.
As a visual aid.
I think that, and possibly if you wanted, yes, I know.
Okay, we'll have to go down the world.
Why don't I just stay here? If I was giving you other things to work on, I think where it would be visual. And I think there were a number of those stories that you told that if you had a photo or you could create a relevant image and put those onto slides, it would help. Because back to what I was saying and what I've talked about in a number of cases where you're dealing with different modes of learning, different communication styles, all of this stuff. Visual people, and I'm primarily not one of them, but visual people will struggle with that style of presentation. And you do need something that is visual to bring them back in. Now, visual doesn't have to be slides. It can be props, it can be animation, but it needs to be something that them out there need to use these to understand.
It can even be your facial and your expressions, your gestures, your movement.
All of that.
Using the speaking area is wonderful in you.
I'm starting to do that a bit more, as you can put it in.
Now, as the only one that doesn't seem to want to come and join the
I'll come up and I'll say something. Well done, David. I thought it was a great speech as well. It had good structure. You started, I like the chronological ordering where you started with your speaking career and progressed through and gave us lots of little stories along the way. Sometimes I got a little bit lost on the story as to what the message was, so that'd be something I've been looking for, is to actually home in on that and punctuate the message at the end of each story, and then transition, and then look at transition options for moving to the next story. Yeah. But lots of good stories in there building up here to the end.
Thank you, David, and thank you everyone for your wonderful comments. David, if you would like to take a picture of this, a photo of this, of the comments on the whiteboard. But does Craig have any comments? Would you like to contribute?
I'm going to wrap up because I do need to go, but I just want to tell David it was a very good speech. And like David said, there were some parts that, like they say, that didn't connect with the stories. And the other thing, which we haven't really discussed, is he had very good posture in front of the camera. But the one thing that he was doing, he kept holding on to his hands. You know, do something else with your hands when you're speaking. But overall, a good speech. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Using your hands, yes.
Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for your feedback. I'm sure David will find that very helpful. Over to you, Mr. Chairman, David.
Morning to you. So now I'd like to, Craig, thank you very much for attending today. If we lose you during morning tea, that's
all right,
okay.
thank you so much for having me. Yes. All right, bye-bye.
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 So morning tea for 5 minutes for caffeine here, coffee break.
I'm not
arguing against
Probably not, but.
The COVID cases are going up in India again. Great, considering the whole country has got vaccinated for. Oh, are you up?
Oh, I'm up. I am.
Did you come in table topics?
Okay, this one, that's right. I thought I was up. That's what.
So what's happened to everyone today? So Shabira, there's Colin, and
Money and remain.
yeah, it was quite a full agenda of lots of things.
So now I've got a question. From what people have said, like one of my previous chat, is maybe a live course might be good to me, although if I'm measuring in that, it's live program. The way to go, we can do a measuring course.
I'll be doing it for somebody else. Let's say, then you will other go to the top. They have closing. We haven't. Because in many clubs, they allow to those two people that are market. No, they close it and they don't do it. So that's a different thing.
Yeah, I'm getting quite frustrated.
No, but suppose maybe there's something that, I don't know,
But they still should let us know
when it is,
before,
I think.
and both of them let me know yesterday evening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Meeting class, no, not at the moment, what's that on the board? Second and fourth Friday.
No.
Yes, please.
I'm not sure.
Okay, man, come on.
End is open now.
Yeah. Country buses. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
My daughter's here at school.
Yeah.
And she's only just graduated.
She ready?
No, well, one of the girls, I think another girl did too. But still,
Both girl, boy.
actually, no, I think one of the girls went to a boy and the other one's a boy went to a girl. I think that's amazing that that actually happened.
Yeah.
At that age group.
What
Still at school.
What also disturbing about someone this morning in the news about so many, school girls, I can't get it from there.
Yeah. Right.
School girls and their days to school.
Coming up.
By the way, by working,
I,
really, what is happening?
Like in politicians with the, British meetings.
Yeah, that's a different thing, but these are young girls, and they are fine, like, doing out.
I didn't have, what are the young girls done?
They have, apparently, there is this culture of rape going on in school, is what they're saying. And I said, seriously, what is this? Are we just following the politics? It just came in this morning, Sydney Herald. Yeah, it's here.
Now, Jill, before we start the meeting, have we thought about doing a LinkedIn page for Keynoters or not?
Hundreds of
I
people.
would happily do that. My next work it is a long-term commitment. And I'll be setting something up that
Somebody that come on up,
then we'll just wire it down.
and then there are schools like.
I
I
think
don't want to have time to take on anymore, and I'm not taking on.
now, I know that Dial did like a educational, paid educational for mind mapping and things like that. There's the marching from a couple of years ago. Have we ever thought of doing like a paid high school thing like that? Or like like a training thing or something outside program? More money coming in.
I'm open, I mean, I said on multiple occasions, let's do the advanced workshop. But the challenge of what kind of good ideas is bringing them to fruition, given that the main people who support this club don't really have that.
My boys, like, actually, they want.
You know, if workshops bring to work, now we don't want those people.
We need to get a couple of rounds together.
Yes.
And Ross, I might give Ross a ring, say how he's getting on. I'll try and ring him.
Okay, let's get going.
Yeah, we better get cracking.
If you would like to call us back to order, David.
Have you got a gavel in there, Jill?
Don't worry, just use.
We're 15 minutes behind. Better get cracking.
Now, for the, just a second, for table topic. Now, welcome back to our meeting, guys. We're all face-to-face only now, not virtual, so now I'd like to hand over to Jill Walker for table topic.
Thank you, David. Keep the recording going, because then we've got it for feedback. Although this is flicked, but that doesn't really matter. Okay. Table topics is the opportunity to speak and give a short, complete, concise, and well-structured answer to a question. In the world of presenting, educating, which is what this club is aimed to help people with, where that becomes really useful is if you are doing a Q&A session. Because the Q&A session within any keynote is the one that you have least control over. And it is where a keynote that previously was good can really be taken down by an audience member. The way I'm going to run this today is using these cards, which we have used here previously, called My Story. These were put together by a lady called Lisa Evans, who is a certified speaking professional, one of my speaking colleagues. So the way we are going to do this is I'm going to ask you to take a card. I was going to reduce the selection and I decided not to. These are Lisa's story cards or My Story cards. So the answer that we are looking for is a 1 to 2 minute speech that addresses the question or statement on these cards. So an example, and I'll take this one out, of the sort of thing you may well get out of this card deck is what energizes you and how do you like to recharge? So if that was the card that you drew, we are looking for a 1 to 2 minute answer to what energizes you and how do you like to recharge. As I said, that one is, we can time it if we want. I'm not overly bothered. I think actually let's time people's individual contributions just to give them an idea. So I'm not going to worry about the order. So either someone can volunteer to go first or I'll volunteer somebody to go first. Well done, David. Take anyone. Give it back to me and I'll read it to you. Okay. So David is going to talk to us for somewhere between 1 and 2 minutes about what does he remember about his first best friend. David, what do you remember about your first best friend?
Thank you, Jill Walker, for such a interesting question. Lisa for that interesting question, but Jill for the question today. This story goes back to 1983 when I was in America, when I had a best friend in year 2 in primary school when Dad was doing some postdoc work in America for 6 months. We used to talk on the phone. We used to do things to each other. One of the times when I was running to the phone post there, I actually slipped and landed on my chin, got some stitches on my chin, one of my many fallings over, and that sort of got some personal memory of that story, but it was good that we used to talk on the phone regularly. We used to post. When I came back to Sydney, we used to send postcards and that, but that after a while we lost touch. So that was my first story. But it's just nice back then, even as young kids, to actually talk on the phone long distance and keep in touch. And to keep in touch and just bringing on childhood memories from different cultures. Mind you, I was an Aussie, she was American, so different cultural backgrounds, but I can still remember the house that I lived in America is way back when year 2, with the star in the backyard, and it was a big 5-acre block now, but Dad said that there's a lot of high-rise buildings nearby, so way back, it's just fascinating to think that I can remember such a scenario from way back when. Those stories are not loaded. Okay. Thank you, Madam Postmaster.
I shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I think, well,
We're way over time, but it's.
yeah, I think maybe something of 1:45, so people can get.
I want to do that. I want to
Well, I think, yeah, maybe if you wave your hand at 1:45 and then, so, okay. Who is next? Indy, what do you remember about your first time in hospital? Indy, what do you remember about your first time in hospital?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Jill, for giving me the opportunity to speak about my first time in hospital. It was a very cold night in the morning. It's about 2 a.m. and I couldn't breathe. And my late wife was 8 months pregnant, and she couldn't walk either or drive either. And I was short of breath. And she, being a medical, suggested that only way out is to call emergency or walk to the emergency, because we were living outside hospital in Westmead. So I remember walking into emergency, and that 100 meters felt like 5 kilometers to me that morning. It was cold, dark, and miserable, and I was walking into the hospital. As I walked into emergency, and this triage nurse attended me, said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Look, I just can't breathe. I ran out of my asthma buffer last night, and here I am." And she first gave me a nebulizer and attended to me, and that's the first time I felt, oh my God, I got my life back. So that vivid memory till this day haunts me like as if it was happened yesterday. And even now, I have a spare asthma buffer in my car and everywhere, so that if I need it, I have access to it. And so I believe we should all be careful of what are our emergency hotspots are and be mindful of it. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, Therese, thank you.
Thank you.
This one, you get it back to anyone you like.
It will.
Okay. Therese this morning is going to talk about the time that she has been in serious trouble. Therese, please tell us about the time that you have been in serious trouble.
Thank you for the question, Jill. I have so many examples. So the hardest part of doing this, I guess, is to choose which story to share with you about being in serious trouble. I'm going to go to my childhood because I guess that's the most vivid, probably the oldest memory of being in trouble. And it was me coming home too late one evening at 16 years of age, too late as far as my father was concerned. I had fairly strict parents. They would stay up until I was home. And if I came home with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, forbid not, parking there, my father would flash all the outside lights on. He'd start making banging noises, open and close the windows, and eventually he'd start yelling out, "Tertius," down the street. And he was a builder and he was a big man. And I'd be sitting in the car, thinking, I really need to go. I remember on one occasion, I thought, I'm going to get more brave. I'm 17 now, I'm allowed to be out there. And I stayed in the car despite the windows, despite the yelling, the lights flickering. I thought, I'm going to stay. And he marched down the driveway in his underwear with a broom. And the image of my dad, I just ran out of that car so fast. And when I got in the house and closed the door, I thought that was the end of the trouble, but that was only the beginning of the trouble. And so I ran up the stairs, closed my door, and thought, just quickly go to sleep and pretend I'm asleep. But it ended in a very long conversation and very stern message from my dad not to do that again, and lots of punishments that involved not going out again for quite some time. So a bit haunted by my memory of my childhood being in trouble, but very grateful. I had wonderful, I don't want you thinking, I've got wonderful parents, but they were certainly very strict with me when I was 16. Thank you.
Thank you, Therese. we've heard from David, Indy, Therese. I think the next person should be Andrew.
Pick the red one.
Andrew is going to tell us about one thing that he is learning to get better at. Andrew, what is one thing that you are learning to get better at?
Thank you very much, Jill. Over Christmas time, I decided I wanted to read a book a week. Now, that was easy over Christmas time, so I actually managed to knock off 3 books in a couple of weeks. But now I'm back at work, that's a bit tougher. But over that period, I also started a speed reading course because I thought if I want to read a book a week, I might as well try and speed my reading up. So I registered with this reading course, and I've progressively gone through all of the learning to actually improve my speed reading. And these are some of the tricks. First of all, you use your finger to run across the lines. Then you move to a point where you run your finger closer to the middle and leave the edges out. And the idea there is that your peripheral vision should start to pick up the other words. And this does actually have an incremental improvement on your reading. The people that I'm doing the course with, some of the people have gone from 250 to 500 and 600 words a minute. I've incremented up by about 50 words a minute. I'm a bit disappointed. But the very interesting thing that I've come across lately in lesson about 15 was to learn juggling. And the coach said that by learning juggling, you actually help connect the left and right-hand side of the brain. And speed reading needs the 2 halves of the brains working together. So what happens in juggling is you actually throw the balls up, and you must look straight forward and not focus on any of the balls, and then catch them, obviously, in your peripheral vision. So it develops peripheral vision, and it promotes left-right brain coordination. Now, I've been juggling for a week now, and I can juggle 2 balls in one hand. That's fantastic. I'd like to get to 3. In fact, I'm so obsessed by it, watching YouTube videos, that I'd love to get to 5, but I've got to get up to 3 first. And I'm hoping that with this exercise, I will now transition into a much faster reader, because I was very, very disappointed that I've only had 50 words a minute improvement. I'll stay tuned. Next month, I'll tell you just how fast it's got me. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you. For our final life story, courtesy of Lisa Evans, I'd like to invite Pushpa to the front. Oh, I'd rather hear one of your life stories than... No, because then I might be... Oh, come on, then. One shade of pink over another, yes. Pushpa is going to talk to us for 1 to 2 minutes about advice that she would give to her 16-year-old self. Pushpa, what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self?
Dear 16-year-old, there were so many things you could have done at that time. Do you realize? Why were you so frightened of the world? Why didn't you have the courage to stand up and say, this is what I want to do? When your father told you that you should study science at university, why didn't you stand up there and say, no, Dad, I like literature better? Why didn't you do it? What happened to all that courage that you should have had? Otherwise, you were quite a leader at school, weren't you? But why is it? Was it just your Indian upbringing that prevented you from crossing swords with a father that you so respected? In a way, my dear 16-year-old, I know that you did the right thing and that you got your life back on track by getting into literature later. But think of all those years that were wasted studying maths and science, which you detested. Yes, you did complete your graduation in science, which is again commendable. Absolutely. absolutely commendable, my dear. But at what cost? When every time your heart was beating to listen to the exposition of the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner by Coleridge happening in the next class, where the English lecturer was going on, and here you're sitting in a class listening to vector theories. Yes, Pushpa, have the courage to stand up for what you want. You don't always have to give in to the wishes of others. And you know what? I'm keeping my 16-year-old aside. I realize I still am doing exactly the same thing. Madam Table Topics Master.
And to give us a brief review of how we handled those questions from Lisa, I'd now like to invite Pushpa and Therese to the front.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. I'll begin with each of the speakers. I'll just begin a little with Jill as the Table Topics Master, who explained the purpose of the segment very well. So if there were any guests in our midst, we would have understood it. Our speaker one, David, on what he remembered about your first best friend. He actually began very well. He connected us to an anecdote of his childhood from his days in America. It was really good. And I thought he talked about the friend for a bit, and then David did something that's quite unusual. He digressed. Instead of talking about the best friend, he talked about the country, about the land, about the house. And I thought there should have been more emphasis on the friend, because he began so well with that anecdote about a friend and what that friendship meant and things. And of course, I would advise David, and I realized it happened because I think Andrew and Therese pointed it out to him, of holding your hand. Sometimes we don't realize we do it, that we are touching our hands, because it's a comfort gesture. You're trying to quell your own trepidation that is there within you. And so you don't realize this is what you're doing. But sometimes it might be good to be, he did use gestures after that, which is great. So overall, a good one, David, a good one. Just remember to stay on track with the topic. The second speaker, Indy, speaking of a memory of the first time in hospital, again, very empathetic, came straight to the point about the incident, about waking up at night and, both husband and wife helpless of how do we get this medical help that we need, and walking to emergency. How lucky that he was just near the hospital, wasn't he? Personal stories always help. With Indy, I would advise that it would help his speech if he employed more tonal variations and hand gestures. There didn't seem to be enough, and there was plenty that could have been done in that speech, whether it was to depict one's own feelings, or, what do we do now? The tonal variety would have added to that speech and enabled the audience to connect to Indy's predicament. Thank you for a good speech, Indy. Therese was our third speaker, and yes, Indy's time was 1 minute and 30. I'm sorry, I forgot. David's time was 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Therese, a time when she was in serious trouble. How wonderful. What an intriguing start. I love the start of Therese's speech. She said, there are so many examples of being in trouble. And I'm thinking to myself, geez, what's this Therese in so many scrapes in her life? Right, there we go. That was really intriguing because it drew us straight into what she was going to tell us. And boy, that story of a 16-year-old and her father, it's just something you can relate to straight away. It has happened with every teenager around the world, be they a boy or a girl. Parents, teenagers coming home late, This is kind of the story of the world, and it was so relatable. There was a very good use of gestures coming in from Therese. What I would also like her to employ is more tonal variation. She had it at one point when the father came out and he yelled, and that imagery of the father in his, in his undergarments and holding a broom or something that she said was like, wow, man, this is frightening. And she spoke of her father as being a big built man because, he was a builder. So there you have all that word, the word pictures were fantastic. Therese took 1 minute and 54 seconds, so well within time. Andrew was our next speaker. He took 1 minute and 47 seconds. And it was about one thing that he's learning to get better at. I was thinking of what was Andrew going to talk about, and then he spoke about speed reading. It really intrigued me. And I was further intrigued when he juxtaposed juggling with speed reading. And I would not have connected the two at all. But how juggling balls has enabled Andrew to become a more skilled reader. I think that is an amazing way to talk about an experience that you're getting better at, especially reading. One thing, Andrew, he's very good with gestures. He uses his hands, but he also tends to put his hand into his pocket. And I don't know why. That happened a couple of times during the speech. The hand just slipped in. First, I thought maybe he's going to pull out something from there to show us or something. But no, it just went in there. And then when he wanted, he used it. Again, it slipped into the pocket. And so that's something I just like him to caution him to be aware about. Sometimes we are not aware of these little minor idiosyncrasies that we have. We all have different kinds of idiosyncrasies. And I think when somebody tells it to us, we will become more aware of it in the future and avoid it. So I think overall, again, a very good speech. I really enjoyed it, especially the juggling bit. I was trying to think, I mean, I read a lot, so I won't really do it, but I'm thinking about juggling and reading. And he's getting good at being a juggler, juggling 2 balls at a time. Hey, isn't that fantastic? So, wonderful table topics today and a wonderful way of getting people to talk with good topics.
We invited Teresa to come in on you.
Yep.
That's why I invited Teresa.
Thank you.
I'm not just, I'm a natural scribe.
Oh, I know, I'm wondering why I'm describing it actually.
Communication, you know?
That's good.
We get that
It's good,
forward
yeah.
for those who want to see it.
Yeah.
Pushpa, always wonderful, always assertive, strong voice. What did I write here? The rhetorical questions. You spoke to yourself, so we didn't even need to be in the room. You just were addressing this 16-year-old vulnerable girl who had a lot of respect for her dad and did the right thing. And I thought it was wonderful, and no years are wasted. No other studies are ever wasted. And I thought it was wonderful. Just over 2 minutes, I've just written wonderful voice, wonderful gestures, rhetorical questions. I don't know anybody else. Jill, did you want to add?
No, I think that's great.
I guess I'm mesmerised. I don't take many notes when you speak, Krishnan.
Oh.
But excellent.
Thank you. And it was 2:10 in the end. Oh, really? 10 seconds. Yeah, you do wrap it up. Thank you.
Well, thank you, one and all. And I will now hand the meeting back to our MC for today, David.
Now, today's third speaker is Andrew Deck, and Andrew's thoughtfully printed out an introduction. So today's speech from Andrew is Pathways to Influence, Level 1 Research and Presenting, usually a 5 to 7 minute speech, but I don't know how long Andrew wants to
probably be about 12, I think.
Are you truly free? Andrew will be presenting on the subject of personal freedom. How free are we? How much control do we have over the decisions we make? How much influence is there to decisions you make daily? How do you look at this from the perspective of, I hope you'll find, the perspective of corporate government, how do we influence? With Are You Truly Free? Please welcome Andrew Deck. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, David. Okay. So how many of us here feel that you have freedom to make your own choices, freedom to do the things that you want and make the decisions you like through life, and you are a free spirit, that you can actually do what you want to do? To a degree. That's interesting. Only half the room actually put their hand up. And that's very interesting. I want to tell you a couple of things around freedom. And at the end of this presentation, I'm hoping that will have sown the seed of thought in terms of how free are we in our current society, and how free will we potentially be in the future to live in that sort of free state. Who's heard of a man, Skinner? Boris Frederick Skinner. So Skinner was voted by his peers as the #1 behavioural psychologist of the 20th century. He was born in 1904 and passed away in 1990. And he believes that the human species is just like any other species of animal, and that our illusion, he called it an illusion, that we are free. And he went about through his career to test that theory with animals. And most of you will have recalled some of these. It's got a box, it's called Skinner's box. And in Skinner's box, he used to test rats in terms of how they would respond to certain triggers. And the first test he did was one where there was a lever on the wall of the box, and as the rat gets hungry, once it works out that if it hits the lever, a food pellet drops into the box. And progressively, the rat suddenly realizes that the more I hit it, the more food I get. And that's called positive reinforcement. He also tested rats with negative reinforcement. So the bottom of the box was electric cabling, and they could give the rat a mild electric shock, continuous electric shock, which would have the rat sort of dancing across the floor of the box, looking for an option to actually turn it off. And again, there was a lever on the wall to actually turn off the electric shock. So it quickly learned from, this is a negative response to a negative situation. He continued to do that sort of testing, put a light inside the cage, and when the light went green, 2 seconds later, the floor would actually electrocute the rat. So it soon learned that when the light went on, it would not go and hit the lever. Now it got progressively more and more intriguing. He put 2 rats in the cage and coached them to fight each other when the electric shock hit them. And as soon as they started to fight, the shock would stop. So I tell you this story because he believes that the human race can be controlled in a manner similar to what I've just described. The whole human race. Now, when we bring our kids up, we say good boy, good girl, bad boy, bad girl. That's exactly the same. It's a little bit, it's not quite as harsh as giving them an electric shock or giving them a treat, but we're constantly trying to condition them and train them. And when I taught my kids to ride their bike in their backyard, and I've told this story before, I said to they're twin boys, I said to Mitchell, when you're riding your bike down the backyard, just watch out for the clothesline. Heard this story? Bang, straight into the clothesline. I said, James, did you see what your brother just did? Whatever you do, watch out for the clothesline. Straight into the clothesline. I reckon if I had 20 kids in a queue, if I kept telling them to watch out for the clothesline, they'd all ride into it. So Skinner says that our behaviour is a consequence of what's happened just before. Now, just before I told them to ride their bike, I told them to watch out for the clothesline. Now, I got them to focus on the wrong thing. But it was still a subtle instruction. I want to wind forward a bit now to today, from Skinner, from my kids, to where we are right now. How many people use Facebook or YouTube or all those toys on the internet? So when you get onto YouTube, how much freedom do you have in terms of what you're going to watch? I mean, you can type in a search and you'll get lots and lots of videos. So you have a fair bit of freedom about what you watch. You search different things. But then there's all those videos, those other videos that pop up that are from your history or from some other, you've done another search somewhere else on another laptop somewhere and you go, wow, that's really amazing, that thing popped up. The same on Facebook. When you go onto Facebook, you look at what's presented to you. You might see a friend's picture and a little story from a friend and you hit like, and then you put something up and somebody else likes that. And a news article pops up and you choose that news article. This is obviously very current based on what's happened in the last 24 hours. So what we're doing in that environment, we're actually training Facebook on who we are. And therefore Facebook knows how to respond. So does YouTube. What's really interesting about Facebook is that they understand the value of all of the data about us. And what they did in 2017, they offered a free service to anybody who wanted to have their profile done to go and do a Belbin profile. Who knows about the Belbin profile? Or might have been Myers-Briggs. It was one of those two. You could say, yes, I want to do the profiling of my personality type. You answer 200 questions. It tells you whether you're a type A, B, C, D, and categorise them. But they did that for a reason. So they got 10,000 people, profiled them, and what they could do then was they go back and look at all of their likes, all of your posts, what age you are, people you hang out with, what interests you have, and they go, okay, we've profiled 10,000 people, we can extrapolate that over the global population of Facebook users. So now they know exactly who I am, what I do, and what I like in terms of how to poke me, like Skinner does. When Skinner's poking his rat to do something, Facebook knows how to respond to me. Now, I take that another level. I bought this device at Christmas time. This is actually a Garmin. Now, this device sits on my wrist. It measures my pulse rate. It measures my oxygen level. It actually measures my sleep habits. And what's really, I find this amazing, it's got a battery level for how much battery power I've got left. And right now I'm sitting at 44%. When I woke up this morning, I was at 76. Now, if I have a good night's sleep and I don't drink any alcohol the night before, I can get up in the 90s. I've never hit 100. But when I wake up in the 90s, I know it. And I look at I can't wait. I look at the watch and I go, I feel great. My watch is telling me I feel great. What's interesting about this is, when I actually linked it to my phone and the contract popped up, the contract was what they call a click wrap contract. You have to hit accept, and then it gives you access to all of the information. It allows that information to me, but it also goes back to head office. And these click wrap contracts are everywhere. And what that contract says, and I didn't realise it until I did some research because I didn't read it. But the contract says that all my personal data will be shared with Garmin, the organisation, and it comes back and benefits me through my phone app and my cycling and all that sort of stuff. But they also have the right to share it. It's written in the contract that we can share this information with our partner organisations. And we're not accountable for your information either. Now, that in itself, I'm floored by this. When I was doing the research for this speech, I was typing into Google certain searches and I would go to a certain website and then it would pop up another contract. So I'd look at the contract because I wanted the information. It was about Skinner, so I wanted to research Skinner more. This particular contract that popped up on my laptop, it only had an accept button. I couldn't reject it. And what was in it, it wanted access to all my personal information on my device, and again, that they could share it with their partner organisations and that they were not held accountable for it. There was a button in the bottom left which allowed me to drill into it, to understand the contract more, and to choose to opt out. So I clicked on that. And then when I went through to it, it allowed me to opt out of GPS tracking, personal data, 3 things. But then it had one button I couldn't turn off. And under that button, when I looked at the contract, it actually said that we wanted, for security reasons, we're going to need to keep track of you from a GPS perspective where you are. So it actually, all the things up above I said no to, down the bottom they said, no, we need to do it from a security perspective. And again, they exited out saying that they have no liability. Now, a couple of researchers in the UK in the legal department decided to look at what these click wrap contracts do globally because they're all over the net. And they did some tests on a sample of 524 different people using a click contract. 70% didn't even open the contract, they just hit accept. Now, of the 30% that opened the contracts, how long do you think the average person spent reading them? Less than a minute?
Seems like a low still, but yeah.
So the average time is 7 seconds. So they just go in, they just scroll down and go, yeah, I'll hit a second. What they then did, they analysed, okay, because these contracts link to their partner organisations, how much work was involved in you to read them all? Their assessment of that one contract was it's a 40-minute read to understand properly. And then there's probably 1,000 contracts you need to read from all their partner organisations. So because every one of them says we can share with our partners. So company A shares with company B says I share with my partners, and it just goes on. So all our personal data, when we log in and buy a device like this, is shared. Now, something else that I want to share with you that's happened in the last 3 days, I listened to a program called China in Focus. Now, China in Focus is a podcast, and if the Chinese Communist Party knew that I listened to that, I would not be happy, because it does not paint a rosy picture in China. But they tell you exactly what's going on in China. There's a particular company in China that manufactures robotic vacuum cleaners. And they've been caught having all of the data from the vacuum cleaners that are sold globally sent back to China. And guess what the data is? Those vacuum cleaners have 2 cameras on them. They have a camera out the front, which is looking at where they're going to go, and a camera up the top that's looking around. So it's capturing all of that information, sending it back to China. And it's in their contract that for that device to work properly, you need to hit the click contract to say, I accept all the terms and conditions. And what these companies do, all of them do this. If you actually don't accept their contract, they guarantee that your product won't work properly because they need that information. And quite often features that don't need to go back to head office could be left on, but they deliberately turn them off. So corporations around the world get this, right? They get it. They write long contracts, make it difficult. They put all the onus back on us as consumers. And, you know, we're left to say, I accept or I don't accept. I accepted this because I wanted the benefits. But I'm starting to question whether those benefits are worth it. Because when you link this stuff up, when you move to the next level and you're actually on Facebook and you know that the vacuum cleaner's gone around your house and it's actually mapped it out. So they want to map out your house. And there's value in that. It's called surveillance capitalism. And it's where Google, Facebook, Amazon, they're all heading there. They're heading there because the value of that data gives them the ability to potentially do what Skinner wanted to do with the rats, is that corporations around the globe want that information because it gives them a power source, and they can sell it. So the reason I tell you all this is because we're seeing what's going on in China with respect to social scores and the ability to manipulate the Chinese community to behave in a particular way. My question to you is, next time you open a click contract, you might stop and consider thinking, what is that click contract doing in terms of my future? Thanks. Yeah.
Now I'd like to have where is the, yeah, Jill and me. You want to speak?
Okay.
Yeah, you want to scrub?
There is another pack here. I have to admit, Andrew, that your speech vaguely surprised me, but it certainly gave me a lot of reinforcement for my vow to not use Facebook, which I worked out a number of years ago, because as we know, there is no such thing as a free lunch.
And Facebook is headed up by a number of billionaires, and yet it is fundamentally a free service. You don't need to be Einstein to work out that there is a massive piece missing between those two. But enough of that. What areas would you like us, in terms of feedback, to focus on with that speech?
Things to see if we got a message across and what was it. I didn't really wrap up the one I wanted to, but anyway.
Who would like to begin with that?
I thought the message was clear. I thought you involved the audience. I thought you planted the seed. I thought you had good research. I thought you stayed on topic. And I thought you were really confident. I didn't see anything about it. No. Yeah.
I would agree with all of that. There was a point where I was struggling to see the link between Skinner and his rats and the click-wrap contract, but towards the end, you did bring that well together. So by the end, I was definitely seeing it, but there was definitely one point where I was wondering, not where it's going, but the link between the two. So given that our numbers are somewhat low, David, have you got any thoughts?
No, really, really, really good. I enjoyed it. Hopefully, I've got something to say, I'll come on. And then the moment, the question, do you read before you click? So then, and then start off the story, because then you've got a question. Think, why is he saying, do you read before you click? And then, because then it'll get them thinking, and then you talk about the rats and the previous stuff, and then bring in the contract. Start off with a question which gets them using the brain, gets them thinking, what's he talking about? And then you bring in like the previous research for the rats, and then now I get on to today's topic about something that's really bothering me. Just something along those lines.
And I think it's been really clear, like the introduction, how much influence is there in the decisions you make daily. So, I mean, I say I've got a lot of friends, some make those choices. So, but a lot of it was about them gathering info on you. So is that answering that question? Is that answering that question? Are you saying the ads you get are linked to the search you made over there, so therefore it is influencing you? Your phone search you say, there's citations, and you'll get, so make that link clearer. But that's the question. Did you answer that question? Or did you say the big data gathering your stuff?
Yeah, I didn't mean it to head down there.
Yeah,
but I just went there.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether David's question would be a better opener.
I'm just thinking analytically.
Yeah. I intended my conclusion was supposed to wrap up a bit more about linking back to that. And the fact that these organisations actually have that much data, what's going to happen in 10 years. You know, as they gather more and more, what do you think could happen to your level of freedom? You can be posed in the direction that
absolutely. And interestingly, the control, if you like, is making the contract extremely complex. So they are funneling you down the accept. I mean, presumably an option you've got, at least with Windows, would be to terminate the process. But let's be fair, that's relatively technical. And it's going to be a small proportion of people that are faced with the sort of contract you're talking about that would know how to do that, firstly, and secondly, in the moment, think to do it. But then add that in with the fact that you're going to spend a fair amount of money on the Garmin, presumably Apple Watches are similar, and so on and so forth, you're not going to get the value if you don't get the full functionality.
Yeah.
So there's actually a double cost, isn't there? There's the however much money you pay, but that's only a small proportion of the price for the device. The rest of the price is what you're handing over on an ongoing basis via the click-wrap contract.
Yeah.
Can I?
Please, certainly.
Thank you, Jill. And thank you, everyone. I think from my perspective, I was a bit lost at the beginning on what the structure is look like. So I think definitely structure could be improved. Overall, I think it was very well researched topic. So you gave us plenty of areas where you have researched. That was clearly evident. So that was good. Your passion was really coming out. So you're passionate about the subject. It was also very clear that there's a clear and present danger of sharing our personal information. That was also very well demonstrated. The areas perhaps could do better is for non-technical audience. We are technical people because we deal with it most of the time. For non-technical audience, what does it mean when we don't read the contract? Perhaps build on that. That would be my only suggestion. I think that will be overall will become a complete package as an each.
And I think with that, I will now hand back to our MC for today, David, who's probably going to be wrapping us up.
And there's Jill, there's a speech. The terrain.
Okay. Impromptu. Even better. My apologies. I just glanced at the agenda a few minutes ago. Yes, I did, but I just glanced at the agenda.
Now, lovely Therese is going to be speaking today on her pathways dynamic leadership, level 2, understanding your leadership style. Today is 3 year handsome, understanding your leadership style.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Indy. Thank you, David. Impromptu speeches and your leadership style. Impromptu, the words that come to mind, unplanned, unprepared, off the cuff, on the spot, last minute. As Toastmasters, we might think of impromptu when we think of our table topics. We get that initial rush of fear, and then we get the relief and the sense of accomplishment when we were able to speak on that topic for 1 to 2 minutes that we hadn't prepared for. I want to talk to you about how you can, on the spot, do a delivery of a speech, regardless of what your leadership style is. You might receive an SMS at 9 o'clock at night asking you to do a speech the next day, Andrew Deck. And can you do it? I say you can in 3 easy steps that you'll remember. 1, I suggest to you, say yes. 2, speak about something you know about. And 3, reflect on how you went and ask for feedback. I'm not going to give you more steps than that. It probably won't qualify as an impromptu speech if you're following too many steps. Yes, talk about something you know and reflect on it. So reflecting back to my week, I thought, what do I know about leadership styles? I had previously completed the Toastmasters Leadership Style Survey, knowing that at some point in the future, not today, I was going to have to speak about it. I finished my survey and I discovered that I have democratic, coaching and authoritarian styles equally, scoring 18 points in each of those, meaning that I chose 3, the highest answer for each of the questions that related to those styles. I wasn't surprised. I read through the styles, the pros and the cons, and thought, yes, in different contexts, I used all of those styles. I also learned that the style I least associate with is bureaucratic, and I thought that also to be true. So it was great that that was confirmed when I did my Toastmasters survey. I'm sure all of you, being far more experienced and
much further along on your journeys have done this survey. You might like to go back and do it again as you've developed over the years. You might find you have changed your main style. So this week with leadership on Tuesday, I teach Show Leadership in the Workplace. So I had some confidence that I could speak today about leadership styles. I used quite an authoritarian approach in that class. They're mainly school leaders. They need lots of direction. We added up how many years of work experience we had to see what was in the room. One of the students missed, do I round it up or down? And I said, well, how long have you worked? 2 months. I didn't want her to round it down to 0. I said, oh, make that 1. So when we added up our experience. We looked this week at the 7 traits of leadership, according to Pat Williams, an author and a speaker. And he says good leaders should have vision. Good leaders should be able to communicate that vision. Good leaders should have personal skills. They should have a strong character, honesty, integrity. They should be competent. That's really important. Have the knowledge, skills and experience in the sector that they are working. They should have courage. They need to be brave. And finally, Pat Williams says they should have a servant's heart. So we looked at that together in Tuesday's class. We moved on to talking about the differences between leaders and managers and the similarities as well with those 2 titles. We looked at different managers, the laissez-faire manager, not so structured, ebbs and flows with the tide. We looked at the political manager, also known as the mushroom manager. The mushroom manager keeping their teams in the dark, only feeding just enough information to get the task done, but certainly not enough information to threaten their own role or position in the organisation. We looked at all those different types, the administrative manager, ticking lots of boxes, very compliance-driven, very black and white, no room for grey, not a lot of discretion. After that, we moved on to the leadership styles, and we teach situational leadership theory, and that depends on the context or the situation. So you may need to be a bit chameleon in your approach, depending on your team and their level of development. So situational leadership theory says there are 4 different leadership styles, starting with directing when you have an inexperienced team, and you need to really guide them, really supervise them, really show them how it's done. We call that the I decide situational leadership model. It moves up to coaching, and here it's the we'll talk about it, but I'm still deciding. Yes, you now have some skills and some motivation and experience, but I'm still going to be the one in charge. Moves across to supporting. We've now trained our team to have pretty good skills. They're getting more confident, they're more able. We call that the let's talk about it and decide together. A democratic approach comes in. And finally, we move to delegating. Now we've got our team, well-oiled machine. We can step back, we've empowered them, entrusted them to do the task, and they can decide. We step away, we don't micromanage a team that is capable and experienced and confident. So I saw a lot of synergy today with the table topics, and of course also with Jill's speech that you might be taking away from this talk now. On Wednesdays, I teach training and assessment, face-to-face 9 hours with 20 new, excited potential TAFE teachers. They're about my age and my style changes. It's more coaching, it's more democratic. I have 2 university lecturers in my class, I have 2 PhDs in my class. I can't use the same approach as I used the day before with my school leaders. Here I like to model best practice. I want them to be my colleagues next year and be doing best practice as we think at TAFE. So we start with an LLN assessment, language, literacy, numeracy. We do a VAC assessment, a visual, auditory, kinesthetic. These are things I'd like them to do. I know from last year's class, 8 of the students are TAFE teachers this year. I know these people will be my colleagues and my peers and I treat them that way. So I'd like to suggest to you, maybe go back, do your Toastmasters leadership survey again, have a look at what you find. If you are a pace setter, fantastic. You're a pace setter, you like working at speed and you like leading, you can follow my 3 steps. Say yes, talk about something you know and reflect on it.
Are you innovative? Excellent. You're creative. Fantastic. Be creative. Get your creative juices going. Say yes. Talk about something you know. Reflect on how you went. If you are democratic, which is one of my main styles, say yes. Talk about something you know and reflect on it. And you might have seen from my message today, democratic, step up and lead where you need to. Be happy to sit down when you're not needed. So I'd like to leave you with those three. I hope when you get the opportunity to do an impromptu speech and you get that SMS from Andrew's deck, you're going to say yes, talk about something you know, and reflect on how you went.
Yeah. I'm glad I only gave you half an hour morning.
Did you find it?
No, I didn't find it. I think it was about 5 minutes, I think.
Sorry?
Is that all?
How long? More. I thought it was about 7, 6, I don't know.
Anyway, we'll know what it was. Yeah, I was going to say, if it matters to you, you can check it on the recording. We actually got 2 recordings of it.
Oh, okay.
We've got the Zoom recording and we've got the high quality slide on version. Yeah, Phil is facilitating. I'll do it if we don't have anyone, but.
Do you want to do it? Everyone else can turn it on.
I might go too, but I'll do it. Mine will do, Carl.
You want to say?
Ask Grant if you want to do it. Do we have a pad?
Oh, there's the black one.
Oh. Are you scribing or? You'll scribe, I'll facilitate. In a word, Therese, even if you hadn't only had half an hour's warning, awesome.
Yeah.
It was a very, very good speech, and for, you know, not quite single digits of minutes, but close there too, it was awesome squared.
Yeah.
So in terms of, you obviously want to reflect on it, you said that several times. So can you be a little more granular about where you would like reflection, taking on board that while you've presumably given it some thought prior to 9 o'clock yesterday evening, you've not consolidated the speech. So what would help you most?
The original feedback I get about adding my tone, did I have appropriate hand gestures, did it make sense? Any feedback is good.
Okay.
So
So we'll certainly do improvement because I think that's an important one for all of us. Let's say what we particularly liked. And I think within the improvement, in fairness to Therese, we should look at it at 2 different levels. We should look at it with a similar, close to impromptu speech, what feedback she could take on board. But I think perhaps of more value might be what she could do to that speech now that she has got more time. And let's assume that you are delivering that speech, I don't know, in a month, and you've got time to take on board this feedback. So let's do, if we split that, so let's do improvements for this speech and impromptu improvements. And then down at the bottom, we'll just do impromptu improvement. So forgetting the topic, but what could Therese do? The next time Andrew SMS is at 9 o'clock on a Friday.
okay, I'll go first. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
There's only 2 options with me or David. Well, you're one of you guys.
Or Therese.
Or Therese can get feedback on herself.
You
Anyhow,
believe in a well-rounded approach to it.
I was so impressed, Therese, that was really good. What I did like in particular was the fact that you took the project and you expanded on it with respect to your experience at work. That was really nice because your experience at work in lecturing on leadership was really appropriate to take the project to there. What I also liked was the message around say yes, talk about something you know and reflect on it. That was really the takeaway message for me, was next time someone asks me to do an impromptu speech, I just look something up and do that. From your presentation style, very confident, and your pace has slowed from when you started at Keynoters, which is perfect. I thought your pace was bang on. Your pauses were right. There's two things I'd be looking at opportunities for, because I was hoping you would look at me because I like people looking at me, right? As an audience member, you were looking at the camera, yet you didn't move between each of us sitting on the floor. So that's the one thing that I think I'd look at. Also, your hand movements were great, and your pace and your tone was good. I think you could move a whole lot more around the stage as well, for whatever to punctuate some of the content. And I don't know how you do that. You might just consider that you did stay in the one spot the whole time, but that didn't really matter to me, because you told the story and you went through it in a logical fashion. They're the things I'd look at, a bit more stagecraft. And well done. I don't think that you need to book a speech a month ahead. I'll just hit you at 9 o'clock each Friday night with your pocket.
I think what I'd like to sort of pick up a little bit on what Andrew has just given you, really for everyone's benefit, to comment briefly on something I know in theory, but I'm probably not very good at practicing, and that is anchoring. So using areas of the stage for particular aspects of the speech. So there's a couple of commonly done anchors. One is where you want to inject some humor into a speech, have a humor spot. And another one, and this one is possibly more relevant for this topic, Therese, if you want to say something negative, step to the side and make this your bad news or negative point, and only use this bit of the stage when you are doing something of that ilk.
I'll back that up. I listened to someone's feedback on a speech recently, and they used a part of the stage, not that there's any direct relevance, for a funeral setting. But then they went back there and laid out a picnic blanket. So the feedback was, hang on, you said somebody die over there and now you're having a picnic. They needed to have the picnic somewhere else.
Absolutely.
That was the anchoring example.
And actually, thank you for that, because it's when you see somebody get anchoring horribly wrong that you really start to understand the benefit of using it. How in that particular case, they probably should have had the funeral parlour or whatever way over there, as far over as they can go, and the picnic story, blanket, whatever, again, over there, because one has to assume that the picnic was a fun, enjoyable event, somewhat different to the funeral. But yes, it's one of those things that is worth keeping in mind, and maybe that's one that you could bring in terms of further improvements for that speech, because there's possibly opportunities where you got your leadership style wrong, and I can almost take this advice myself, where I got the communication style wrong. Maybe those stories need to be told from somewhere back here. You know, the time I got frog marched out from the client in Southampton, wasn't quite that bad, but it was close. Should be way off somewhere, not my main point. Further feedback, particularly I think where we should look, is what could Therese do now that she's given this speech, awesome though it was, if she is preparing it to be a keynote or part of a lecture or something where, by definition, she's got a lot more warning than she had this morning.
That's where it passes a little bit, because it's then contradicting. You know what I mean?
to a degree, but you can tell the whole thing as an experience I had last week. I got the SMS from Andrew and, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so that's certainly, so, you know, maybe if we could put that as but encapsulate the whole thing into a story. Other improvements?
I build on some of the wording. I love the words like mushrooms and,
Mushroom management, mushroom management.
management. I'd love to find more words like that. It's really good, isn't it? People keep
Yeah.
in the dark and,
Give them a shovel of shit every now and then.
yeah.
Sure.
And chameleon. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to add a few things. First of all, thank you for giving us a wonderful speech. I think it's a key message for us. I definitely got yes, talk about what I know, and then ask for feedback. So that's a clear message, really made home for me. And it also was clear that you were confident in delivery in terms of leadership style. So the area that could build on is on the storytelling. Is perhaps used as an example where you have to do an impromptu speech at work and how it actually benefited the audience on the topic. And that would be more valuable, the story linking. And that would also build on to people's intention of if there is given a task like this, it's not a rocket science, we can all do it. So, thank you.
Possibly again, if you were building on it to be a full-on keynote, some of the visuals, I think there are opportunities in there for some visuals.
But I thought about that, and I also thought about talking about how I love my PowerPoint, and I thought, I can't make this less impromptu.
Yeah.
I have to do that. I can't make this too planned.
Agreed.
So that's, I was
Okay.
thinking about that. Not a couple of things, like other things this week.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, then, I'm giving that deep message. I'm showing.
Okay. I'm putting the visuals in if you're developing this for a full-on. So I'm actually stepping away from, that's not a criticism of what you did this morning. That speech has got a lot of potential to pull it out of the impromptu and convert it to a fully prepared keynote. But I think if you're doing that, it does need a bit more work. And if you've already got it, great. But it does need some more visuals, maybe some more structure. But the structure was pretty good. So I think if we have visuals here,
This is for this piece, for feature.
No, okay.
So this is for feature.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right, okay. Okay, I think we are probably done. So if you would like to get a photo of that, but I will of course make the recordings available to you.
Awesome.
And I will now hand back to David.
Thank you, Jill and Therese, for that wonderful speech. Now let's see general business that Andrew Deck.
We might skip this, but I didn't come unprepared for this part.
What we could do if you wanted is just go look at the DCT, or we can just quickly run around where we've got. I mean, I'm thinking we're going to do reasonably well on the training.
Yeah.
So of the four of us who've taken on leadership positions, has everybody done CLT this round?
Yes,
You've done it?
I did it last night.
I did it.
Have you done CLT this round?
I haven't done it.
Okay, that's something there's only one more left.
Yeah.
So
We can do it online or?
it's only online, it's pretty hideous, but yeah.
But there's only, you have to do it in a scheduled session though. So last night, Jill went to, it was 3 hours.
It's 3 hours, yeah.
Yeah, I did a 3-hour session a few weeks ago. I sent a link in you'll have it in your email to where to look for the scheduled sessions.
And I think what we also need to do is remind,
But Romani would have done it.
no, well, Romani will count, but Shavira, and who's obviously Chris is gone, who's our sixth officer? 1, 2, 3, 4, Shavira. Pushpa's done it.
So
Yeah.
there's 4 people who've done it.
We've got the 4. I'd actually like to get, we're obviously not going to get 7 thanks to Chris.
Yeah,
But let's go for the 6.
but you can do that in the
In terms of awards, let's just see if I can quickly do this. We are doing pretty well, given the size of the club.
That reminds me, Jill,
I think, so if you just finished level 1, you finished level 1. That's your first level 2. That was the leadership one that you were going to do this week. So you'll do it next month.
yeah, I'm here for that.
Yeah.
So I have 40 settings, but not to that level.
Yeah.
I'm level 2.
Next one.
Oh,
Same. Yeah. So any more going to do leadership today?
Yeah. I have
So if we just quickly, I mean, where we're going to get homegrown reporters is on the membership, but I think we just have to accept that.
Jill, can I ask a question, semantic question? Since Windows is actually folded, can I actually transfer that level 1 credit?
No, not if it's been put through.
Oh.
Depends if it's been put through.
I think it has been put through.
No, unfortunately, anything that you credit to a club that then doesn't make it to the end of the year. So you still have it, but essentially no club will get the benefit of it.
So the 2 level 1s will be Cerise
So
and
that's where we
Izzy.
are at the moment.
Oh,
Okay, so we've got they've actually already put it through. So we have actually got the club training point, but I would like you, if possible, Indy, to do the training.
Yeah.
So
You'll need to look online, there's only one left. And it'll be before the end of the month.
I'll have a look here.
Yeah.
But then it would be nice if we can get 2 more new members, but I think that's going to be challenging.
We got also.
Yeah, Colton couldn't make it today,
Yeah, when you look, those 2 people are Colton and Jerez. Right, so we need to go back.
I'll tell you what, I did send him an email, but I'll ring him up if you want.
I think he'd be worth giving a go to. But even if we get Rock, we're still 1 down.
I know,
And so in,
by June. Yeah, there's still time. There's plenty of time.
now, with level, I should get a level 2.
We
But
only
that,
need 2 of them. Okay.
well, 2 there and 2 there.
They can close at the moment,
Yeah.
we're doing updates. So I'm trying to check how far I've got, but I've done the
All right.
introductory inventory, so is that level 2 down there?
That is the 3rd of the, so it might be that you've finished your level 2, but we need to check that you've done. Yeah, because you did the communication style, which is also.
I did
You did it last month here. Or the month before.
no, I did the communication file at our window.
Okay, I thought you did it.
All right, so look, I think we'll get the level 1s and the level 2s. That level
Yeah.
1's easy.
I can start the level 3.
We'll get the level 3 because I could get
You've
it.
only got 2 more. You'll get
Why do you
that.
get that one?
Yes, they just got ringing up every Friday night.
But I've got 2 more, 2 sessions this week.
Yeah.
The mentoring will be the hard one. I think actually we all need to do the introduction to Toastmasters mentoring, so we need to have a look at that and work out between essentially the 5 of us plus Pushpa and maybe Ramani, I mean, and largely, and Colton, how
we do that. So you've got the book there. Can you just quickly go through
Yeah,
that?
I'm just looking for
It is in alphabetical order.
and well, then I'm looking at.
And let's see what is needed.
I did look, I did actually look at this in my last preparation for today, that's why during the quiz that I had done, did look at. Project introduces the value of mentorship in the first month of the mentors and projects. So the project is clearly defined as first month of envisioning mentoring, right from their content and then at that time when you're a protege.
Which is what David did today.
And the report of becoming a mentor, not a report of the content of this project.
That's right, I was again, why?
Yours was fine, David.
Yeah, so you'll do one more and then you'll then get to level two.
No, I've done, introductory to mentoring.
That's the first, that's
That's the third one.
That's the third one, so done. So level two, done. You get the one.
Oh, good.
Well, I think I've got the mentoring to do, and maybe one other.
Yeah.
So I'll get a level two, if I get,
Now, I'll do a question to you. I like to send it to the monthly thing for Zoom. I really want to get some more education done. Somebody told me to do that. I only would like to do for weekends, I'd like to do education, first time.
Okay.
To try and explain that everything.
Okay. So, just educate, they don't contribute to this, do they? Education.
Yeah, I think they do.
Okay.
Hmm.
Do they do?
Sorry,
Do education contribute to the CDP?
no. Well, yes, but not through pathways, so there's other extras that you, in sort of 4 and 5, you'll find places that you need to do it.
Okay.
You know, a little bit like other education within ACG and ACS.
Yeah. If we get time for me.
No,
We've got to try and get through the.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this. If I did introduction to co-classroom mentoring, that would be my level 2, so slot me into that and the next month or the following month.
Okay.
Now let's just be exact careful here. So, I've got convention, which is going to subdue me a little bit. When's our next meeting?
20th, March.
20th, okay.
I don't know that I've got my,
Yeah.
places, thyroid registration.
If you wanted to, then I could do the mentoring,
Okay.
and that would be level 2 finish. Somewhere along the line, I've had active listening signed off.
Okay.
Now, level 3, I did a level 3 project when I did my introduction workshop last month, but I've got no bloody clue which actual project it was.
All right. So you will have done the 3,
So
project 1.
Well, it's actually project 2, because with level 3, there's understanding emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And then I've got 2 of the southern electives to do. So I could, between now and June, I could get a 2 and a 3.
Okay, good. So you're going to get a 2 and plus 3 is the first.
Yeah. No, definitely. 2 and 3.
Okay.
Because that's only 3 more projects. So we've got March, April, May, June. As long as I speak 3 out of the 4, I'll get.
Okay. So it sounds like 3.
I'll get 2 more between now and June.
That's mentioned in your.
Mentoring and business.
Good.
So, how long? I try to finish the look to it, right?
So which 3 you want?
And, when I get access to right hand, quality, the sort of upright, how long do you reckon the person will be on the spray, on the running spray?
Project.
And you think you've got a
Level
whole.
3, 1 project.
You've got leadership style,
I think it's really one.
okay?
Okay,
Cross-functional surrounding, what you're building, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you can do 3 in 4 meetings, can you? Okay, so in the, I do 3 and 4.
I can,
So it looks like you've got the 2.
I can do a couple.
Actually, hang on, now, let's think about it. You're going to get 2. You're going to get to do that, so I don't need to point that through.
I've got the,
So that gets us 2 points, looking at
It's
that.
four.
That gets us row 2 and row 3.
Done. So 2 sets of
Well done,
letters, that would be very good.
and I might even try to think of the level 3.
You're more than welcome to do the thing for some, so get any point.
All right. So you want to stay with the next year? if you-
Yeah,
Well, not necessarily, because you can straddle. Like the key thing is that the point, you get the point, effectively in the game you finish.
Yeah.
You can start it for June,
yeah, it's really possible.
how you credit. So we'll certainly get rows 1, 2, 3. We've already got row 4.
I can probably.
No, we haven't actually got it, but we will get it with line 3. Is anyone going to get any 4 or 5?
I can get it. I've done, I think I've actually finished one part, it's
Okay.
it's like
So that'll
running
get
an
us
office, working environment.
Because there's also, what you believe, that the only company I want to do with right now is the current president of the weekly. So I can probably into this district, is trying to get some speeches done there. And then the next year, credited to the Keynoters.
Whatever works. I mean, it
And
is.
then I get another person that I can cover on this, issue. But I'm still, I want to register before last to say for my second half.
Yeah.
Because which do you reckon are all the parts virtually the same after?
Levels 1 and 2 are close to identical. You get a tad of variation from 3 and beyond. But certainly, I think from July, I would just be picking and choosing where we have to work on.
Right.
So I'll get the 2 and the 3, and then I'll start getting quite choosy.
I'm a little bit confused. On the level 1, who was going to get the last 2 level 1s? I can only get one of them.
Who are the 2 that have got them? I must be one of them. Well, I'm not.
Oh, maybe you are.
I think I am, because I definitely completed a level 1 about 2 months ago. I
Well,
think
that
the
should be
2 are better than me.
Well, Indy's gone through as well.
Okay, maybe it's Indian then.
I'll check.
That's because maybe Indy hasn't been qualified, hasn't come through.
Maybe I didn't go, I haven't got the last page in the thing.
Remember that this is separate to the base camp approval.
Yeah, I know, I know.
And I'm wondering whether you signed it off in base camp,
I haven't.
but not in here.
Yep.
In which case, that would be our 3rd. Yeah, so I think the 2 are Therese and me. And then Indy could do 1, and I don't know where Colton comes to.
Oh, Colton, yeah.
I mean, Colton has done 2 speeches.
Yeah, pretty much. Just wrapping up. Admin. Yeah. Is there anything else?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, I think we've got a decent chance of getting 4 out of those 6 points. So if there's 5, there's 6. So we'll get to distinguish except for the membership.
We'll get 6 points.
I think we're going to get 6. We might make 7. Yeah.
Although it's not like and that's
Yeah, pretty much.
deal breaker.
Yeah. So Chris rejoining will certainly help.
Michelle, I didn't do this every day.
I don't know.
I'll go to all. Oh, wow.
Sorry?
Not really.
Should we try to move to that? Try to.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
So you've got enough.
Yep.
On the Gold Coast, sure, you're gonna move up there.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. I'd like to see that here. It's so much fun.
moving to the Gold Coast. Not sounding likely.
No.
So, vote next month, no Zoom?
Yeah, next month, does everyone agree we're not going to Zoom?
I agree. I have been feeling, as I've said, a long time, that it's effort from David, Andrew and me primarily. And we're not getting the benefit. The people, Ramani, Shavira, Linda, Craig, lovely people, most of them, but they're not chipping in, they're not supporting the club. And to me, it feels
And it's good for me, doesn't talk to the camera, is it? A little bit.
well,
Yeah,
no,
I look at that today, looking to the recording, I'm that much longer ago, and I look around and go, shit.
And I've never been a second to that, faithful.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to keep bringing the camera, and if once we stop doing Zoom, we can put the camera so that people can get a better, and that will be of more benefit, in my opinion, to people that are putting the effort in and actually doing stuff.
Well, you've got the skills to do the library, but you have to do it, like if worst case closes, you know? There's no
We've got
can do it.
Yeah.
You've got the skills.
Yeah.
We're still doing the work, so many people aren't.
Hybrid. Yeah, which is, in the budget, isn't it? So I'm one of those givers to my students, you know, I see myself next door, see myself at the deadline, and the big week is very like, we've come back face to face, all these students have signed up for face to face training. Do not do it through, don't open the door and let them sit at home. And so even on our information last week, one of my students was at the Coast A Forest for February 14th. And I said, unfortunately, no, don't worry, I'll catch the orange man, it's not the end of the world. But I just don't want to start that up. Because case are very, if we lose the face to face, case individual stands alone anyway, but like what's our differentiation point and so on. But so, yeah, I'm trying to be less. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I always go, yes, cool. Like, let's do it. It doesn't matter about this, so I'm not doing it. They're basically, well done.
And that's how I feel about the.
All right.
Yeah.
So no
That's
more
what
Zoom.
we've done.
So, guys, just to let you know, I'll probably, tell you, waiting from the contest, I'm going to do that, on the 20th of March. I'll let you know closer to the time, where, it is to go speak in March. I'll take it home.
This is yours?
One of those, it's important, one of those,
Well, I've got one more question, and that is, because we've lost half our people today, Saturday, for reading. They can't get.
Well, we've only actually lost two this past week,
Three.
Colton.
Marty, Colton, and, they've all got other things on. And we lost Indy for the first half of the year to get stuff done during the week we can't.
And push for the next time.
Do we want to find a new time?
Saturday mornings are like office stuff,
There what?
like some home office stuff, we never get to in the week. But for me, this was perfect slot. Sunday.
Someday.
Okay, I think we need to,
Tell what the alternative would be though. Like,
Well,
what would be the alternative?
Well,
certainly mine. No,
Right, yeah, but
that's
Which
probably.
is already committed to
I think
Sunday night.
Can we do it like, instead of saying once a month, can we do it once a fortnight?
No, that's
No, they're good.
one day.
Yeah.
Okay.